Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The trees whizzed by in an indecipherable blur. Only the greenness of it all gave it away to the pathetic, beaten orange lump that piggybacked on the famous copy ninja as he launched himself from tree to tree. The path returning to Konohagakure was relatively short. They would make the village in a few hours. What bothered Hitaki Kakashi was the orange lump. He was just that, lumpy, immobile, not moving, dead-like. Normally one couldn't get Naruto to shut up and sit down without the aid of a vast supply of ramen, but now. Kakashi looked over his shoulder at Naruto, and then swiveled his gaze to Pakin, a stare that desperately sought the answers to it all. Shaking his head, the little ninja dog had nothing to offer. Any answers about Naruto's condition would not be forthcoming until the blonde-haired shinobi was ready. Until then. Sir, an eager Mednin shouted as his squad fell in beside him in the tree jumping. We have news about the status of the Genin team sent to retrieve Sasuke. Kakashi shook himself from his thoughts and focused on the ninja. Report, was the taciturn command. Pakin shook his head. Some things never changed. Sir, the Nin said yet again as Kakashi waited for him to expand his annoyingly short vocabulary. The Genin have been recovered from various locations throughout the forest. Akimichi Chuji is in critical condition. His body is deteriorating at a rapid pace, and he doesn't have much longer unless his condition improves soon. Hyuga Niji was found next. He has extreme tissue damage in his shoulder and extensively across his muscular system. He too is in critical condition, but shows signs of recovery. The Mednin took a deep breath before continuing. Inazuka Kiba, Rock Lee, and Nara Shikamaru were found to be in stable condition and were able to assist us in helping them return to Konoha. They will all need further treatment, however, except for Narasan, who only suffered a broken finger. Kakashi chuckled inwardly at that. Kamisama knows he probably defeated his opponent with his vastly superior logic and intellect. Few could match him in that area. Our allies from Sunagakure were extremely helpful in assisting Inazuka-san, Lee-san, and Narasan. They are waiting in Konoha and have suffered no injury. Kakashi smiled at this. Gondai-sama had truly brought Konoha into a position of strength once again. However, Sir, the Mednin repeated, what is Uzumaki Naruto's condition? Kakashi paused at this. Absent from the medical shinobi's tone was the condescension, hatred, or disgust usually present when the average person referred to the young Jinchuriki. Shaking the feeling off, he stated calmly, Naruto is suffering from physical and churka overexertion. He has no serious injury that I can detect, but is rapidly losing consciousness. The Mednin nodded gravely, and they continued in silence. During the report, Naruto was overwhelmed by his emotions. Pain and agony over the betrayal of Sasuke fought bitterly with the guilt quickly accumulating over his failure to make his friends' sacrifices worthwhile. If they die, he thought, it's all my fault, just because I wasn't strong enough to break the bond like Sasuke team did. If they die because of me. He couldn't bear the thought any longer, and his mind began to shut down for repairs. As his eyes closed, his last sight was of his friends, his teammates leaping through the trees in front of him, looking back expectantly, waiting. Someone finally expected something great from him. Besides, Niji said, grinning, you have better eyes than me. Naruto beamed his fox-like grin. They knew he would succeed in bringing Sasuke home. It was his job, the reason he was brought along. And yet, he failed, and all he had to show for his effort was a symbol of his reluctance to act like a shinobi. The scratch across Sasuke's forehead protector was a sign that he could have killed Sasuke, but didn't. Yet this didn't stop Sasuke from leaving, only from not killing Naruto. His last sight was of his friends. His last thought was worse, repeating like a mantra until he lost consciousness completely. Sakurakin's gonna kill me. However, killing was exactly the opposite action on Haruno Sakura's mind as she stormed up the steps to the Hokage's office. Disgruntled was a mild way of describing her mood. Her normally perfect hair stood out in the strangest directions, her skin showed a lack of hygiene, she hadn't showered, and her eyes blazed with ruthless anger. Royally pissed was a better way of describing Sakura's mood. However, unlike normal situations, she refused to let her temper get the better of her. Acting with a cold and calculating attitude that would have shamed Orochimaru, she stalked towards the two special jounin outside the Gondame's office. Sakura had learned 3 things in the span of a few hours, and they were pretty good lessons. 1. She had better chakra control than Hyuga Niji, but the stamina of a newborn baby may be less. 2. Naruto was infinitely more talented a ninja than she, and she knew why. A ninja had 3 basic moves: hinge, bunshin, and kawarimi, transformation, replication, and replacement respectively. In these 3 areas Naruto had no equal, for his understanding of the technique surpassed even hers, Sasukekin's, and Niji's combined. They were his main weapons, and combined with his quick-thinking tactical mind, he was formidable indeed. I'm smart, she thought. Why can't I think like a baka like Naruto? And finally, 3. She had to get stronger and fast. Knowledge is power, many have said. She grinned. Sunadesima wouldn't know what hit her. Her mission was simple: become apprenticed to one of the most powerful ninja in Konoha, a legendary Sannin. The Jounins tensed at her approach, then relaxed when they saw the not very intimidating approach of Sakura. One smiled and said kindly but firmly, "Sorry, Haranosen, but the Gondame isn't seeing anyone today." Sakura smiled and kept on walking, causing the Jounins to fall into a ready stance. "Miss, please stop where you are, or we will stop you." Sakura grinned again and took another step. With a yell, the 2 Jounins leapt forward, kunai out, and slashing to meet the obvious imposter. They sliced forward in unison and hit nothing but air. The bunshin continued walking until it vanished in a merry burst of smoke, leaving 2 very wary and confused Jounins who needed to get out more and hone their skills. For they failed to notice the outrageously pink-haired shinobi calmly enter the office of Tsuden, the legendary sucker. Tsunade was amused, if the curve of her pink lips was anything to go by. Reassured, Sakura closed her eyes for a moment to prepare her long and complex argument on why she should be trained as the next greatest medical ninja of all time. Satisfied, Sakura walked over to Tsunade's desk and slammed her palms down so hard that the dutifully ignored paperwork shook. "Train me as your apprentice." "Booyah!" Inner Sakura yelled. Tsunade opened her mouth, but at that moment a doctor appeared at the door, escorted by 2 harried-looking Jounins. They glared when they saw Sakura, who only grinned cheekily in response. They snapped to attention almost immediately, though, and the doctor stepped forward. "Gondai-sama, the medical team has returned with the Genin team. It has been suggested that you come to the hospital immediately, where a full report can be delivered." He stared pointedly at Sakura, who had the grace to blush and look down. Tsunade sighed. "Sakura-kun, our conversation will have to wait. However, I have an assignment for you. Notify all the Genin who know any of the following: Chuji, Niji, Shikamaru, Kiba, and Naruto. Tell them to report to the hospital in 3 hours." Sakura could only stare. She wanted to know what had happened on the mission, but realized that she would have to wait until she could visit Sasuke-kun and Naruto in the hospital. "Hi, Gondai-sama." Sakura ran out. She knew exactly who she needed to find. Then, she could visit Sasuke-kun and Naruto. She didn't even think of the possibility that Sasuke-kun would actually go to Orochimaru. Chapter 2. When the tough got going. Drip. 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 The sound would have been infuriating to the man's ears if he had an ounce of humanity left in him. He didn't. Orochimaru yawned and stretched, still becoming comfortable with his new vessel. It was so inconvenient having to wait for something you wanted so badly. He rose to greet Kabuto, who was escorting none other than Sasuke-kun himself. Orochimaru grinned. It was time to see what the Uchiha was capable of doing. He motioned, and Kabuto fell into step behind him. Sasuke stared for a moment, then quickly followed. "Sasuke-kun," Orochimaru stated, "you are the chosen one." Sasuke was emotionless. "I don't care. Hurry up and give me power." Kabuto started, and leaned down to whisper in Sasuke's ear. "You should know that that man in front of us is none other than Orochimaru-sama. You would be wiser to show respect." A second later, he pulled back as Sasuke flared his chakra briefly. It was enough to scare Kabuto away and to get Orochimaru's attention. "This boy's chakra is even more evil than my own," he mused. Oh, but the possibilities. Aloud, he said, Sasuke-kun, what would you do to attain power? Sasuke finally showed emotion. He smirked in the way only one who has nothing to lose can. Anything. Orochimaru smiled again. This boy was quickly becoming his new favorite. Then again, he thought, that's not always a good thing. Chuckling quietly, he motioned Sasuke forward. He touched his cursed seal, and it flared violently, causing Sasuke in his exhausted state to fall to the ground writhing in pain. Sasuke, this seal marks you as my own. Whatever freedom you have is because I allow it. You are also the sole possessor of the cursed seal now. The snake Sannin neglected to mention Anko, but he decided it would be better if his plans for her were unknown to Sasuke. After all, if Plan A knew about Plan B, who knows what they might do out of jealousy. Unable to control himself, Orochimaru's laughter reverberated throughout the halls, while Kabuto and Sasuke could only wonder what caused such a reaction. Sakura raced through the streets of Konoha. She had already notified Shino and Tenten. The only two left were Inapig and Hinata. I wonder who Hinata will visit first. Neji, Kiba, or Naruto. She shook the thoughts away, though. She needed a clear head to deal with Ino, though admittedly that was becoming easier and easier since the Chunin exams. Sakura knocked once, twice, and then a third time just to be annoying. If the frantic thumping of footsteps approaching the door were any sign, she had achieved her goal. A very frazzled Ino answered the door, shocking Sakura immensely. She grinned evilly, seeing an opportunity. Geez, Ino, and here I thought you cared about your looks. Ino began to slam the door right on the oversized forehead when Sakura's hand shot out, halting its advance. Seriously, Ino, I have important news. Ino was still wary, but stepped to the side. Seeing it as an invitation, Sakura stepped across the threshold and leaned against a wall. This better be good, forehead girl, Ino growled. I was about to take a shower. Thank Kami-sama, Sakura muttered. Anyways, Ino, Shikamaru and Chuji have returned from their mission. Gondai-sama said we could visit them in 3 hours, but by now it should only be about 2. It was true. Finding Shino had taken the better part of an hour, and Sakura had been none too pleased at his nonchalant attitude about the inconvenience. Still have to find Hinata, Sakura thought. She'll want to see Kiba and Neji. Sakura ran hard. The sooner I find Hinata, the sooner I can see Sasuke. Booyah? Sasuke-kun rocks. What? Hinata exclaimed. What happened to Kiba-kun? Sakura saddened. This messenger business was wearing thin, too much bad news delivery. Kiba, Naruto, Neji, Shikamaru, and Chuji were sent on a mission to retrieve Sasuke-kun. All were severely injured except Shikamaru, and Neji is in particularly critical condition, Sakura explained. Hinata paled. Naruto-kun, Najina-san, please be okay. When are we allowed to see them? Hinata asked quietly. Sakura smiled. Gondai-sama said they should be ready for visitors in an hour. It'll take that long to get to the hospital from here. Why don't you walk with me? Maybe it will cheer her up. The poor girl looks devastated. Hinata smiled. Arigato, Sakura-san. I would like that very much. Naruto-kun. They walked down the street to the hospital, oblivious to the medical chaos ensuing at the hospital. Bring me the deer antlers, quickly, Tsunade shouted, immediately returning to her scrutiny of the massive medical textbook in front of her. She growled in frustration, then started when she noticed a book on the table that wasn't there before. A complete report of the Akimichi soldier pills? She read aloud. By the Nara clan? Tsunade flipped it open, coming to a stop at a detailed picture of the red pepper pill which was rapidly killing Chuji. Tsunade grinned. Eureka, she whispered. Meanwhile, her assistant Shizune was having a rough time. Kanji littered the floor of the operating room, and the ninjas in the room positively glowed with green healing chakra. Neji's gaping wound in his shoulder should have killed him, but somehow he still showed life signs. Not wasting an opportunity, Shizune was assigned the task of mending the horrific gash. Pass your chakra through the hair like you were threading a needle, she shouted amidst the deafening hum of the Fuin jutsu she had activated to preserve Neji's condition. One mistake could destroy the new cell's homeostasis. The Mednans nodded. No words were spoken. There was work to be done. Neji twitched in pain. Naruto stared at the Konoha Hitai in his hand and ran in fingers along the scratch he had etched across the leaf symbol. Rasengan. Chidori. He sighed. He had pulled his punch, but Sasuke team was too immersed in the cursed seal's corruption to rationally perceive that. He had left the Valley of the End with the notion that he had won the battle. He had lost. Horribly. Naruto glared at his now normal human hands, imagining claws extending from his fingertips. It would have been so easy, 2 inches higher or lower, and in exchange for Sasuke's punch to the gut, Naruto could have taken off his scalp or his jugular, leaving the traitor to bleed to a messy death. But I couldn't, he thought. I didn't want to sever the bond like Sasuke wanted to kill me. Now, though, Naruto imagined Sasuke standing before him, in all his arrogance and hatred. Naruto wanted nothing more than to plunge a kunai into his cold black heart. No more holding back. Next time I see that bastard, I will kill him. That's a promise. I don't go back on my words. His musings were interrupted with a knock at the door. Puzzled, he remained silent, wondering why doctors chose now to knock before entering his room. Usually they just came in so they could treat his wounds, which were healing remarkably fast. Stupid fox is good for something, I guess, Naruto said aloud. Damn straight, Naruto. Do you have any idea just how badly you were injured? Naruto started at the voice, then turned to face a grinning Tsunade. Naruto returned the grin with a smirk. Oh, hey there, Obacon. Against all odds, the legendary sucker gave no sign that the jibe affected her. Instead, she sat down on the bed. Naruto waited expectantly. Tsunade noticed his uncharacteristic silence. Strange. He really is more thoughtful than I gave him credit for. Aloud, she began her prepared speech. Naruto, do you have any idea what Sasuke did to you? Naruto nodded. Sure, he began. He betrayed me and Sakura and the rest of Konoha. He put a 4-inch hole in my shoulder, broke about 6 ribs, and drove me to Churka exhaustion. That stupid bastard. And all for the joy of being Orochimaru team's new body. So hell yeah, I know what Sasuke did. Naruto realized that he was standing on the bed and had just shouted at the Gondame Hokage who, if he played his cards right, might name him the Rokudame. He sat down and had the humility to blush. Gomen, Hokage-sama. Tsunade stared once again. The loudmouth ninja who won her jade necklace from her was gone. He's still loud, if the ringing in my ears is any indicator, she thought, but this trauma changed him, just like Jiraiya. She stood up abruptly, inspired. Naruto, there's someone I have to see right now, but I'm clearing you for visitors. Is that all right with you? Naruto sighed and looked out the window at the ironically beautiful day outside. Sure, but I doubt anyone will want to see a demon. Slap. Naruto stared ahead, shocked. Tsunade had just sent his head on a merry-go-round, and now she was pulling him into a bone-crunching hug. Oh, Naruto, she sobbed. Why can't people see you for the hero you are? You have to remember, you are not the Kyuubi. You are Naruto, and you have saved us all from that force of destruction. She pulled away and held him at arm's length. Promise me you'll never forget that. Then, she grinned crookedly. Besides, I lost my necklace to the future Hokage, not some demon bastard. Naruto smiled, eyes blurry, yet he refused to let them fall. He fingered jade pendant hanging around his neck, then said, I promise, Obacon. That's my nindo. Tsunade smiled and turned to leave. Besides, she said over her shoulder, I think you'll be surprised at who shows up here before the day is done. Tsunade walked down to the lobby of the hospital, having just been told by Shizune that Niji was stabilized and that visiting could commence. But first, she groaned silently. I have to explain a few things to this. A veritable mob of genin and jounin lingered in the lobby, talking. When they saw Tsunade, however, they immediately quieted down and turned to face the Hokage, who grinned weakly. Kurenai fired the leading shot. Hokage-sama, why is my student currently in the hospital intensive care? Asuma followed up with a 1-2. And why are Chuji and Shikamaru injured? I heard from Ino that Chuji was just pulled from death. How was he almost killed in the first place? And finally, a vicious uppercut was delivered by the famous copy ninja. Where the hell is my team? Tsunade sighed and explained how she had asked Shikamaru to lead a team of exceptional genin to retrieve Sasuke. She then explained that all members of the team, including the sand team that she had begged. She didn't say begged, though she knew that she literally got down on her knees in the letter she sent to Gaara, had all come back alive and were well on the way to recovery. Kakashi still wasn't satisfied. I said, "Where the hell is my team?" Tsunade looked down. "Kakashi-san, you know very well that Sasuke has defected to Orochimaru. Naruto has suffered extensive injuries at his hands trying to bring him back. You know this, you carried him back yourself." She inhaled and continued. "Sasuke is now officially declared ins class missing Nin, to be captured or killed on sight." Surprisingly, there were no protests in defense of the Uchiha prodigy. Instead, much to her pleasant surprise, several of the Jounins began grumbling until Kurenai said aloud, "Is Naruto going to be alright?" Several other Jounins nodded in agreement, wanting to know how the Jinchuriki was faring. Tsunade was puzzled, to say the least. "Yes, he is going to make a full recovery. Why are you all so curious?" Asuma spoke up. "Well, the kid almost killed himself trying to help Konoha. That kinda improves his image in the minds of some people, you know? Mention his name on the streets, and you'd be surprised how many people have a different take on that kid." The Jounins nodded in agreement once more. Tsunade turned away, hiding her tears. When she had reasserted control, she announced, "Now that this is over with, there's still someone I need to see. The Genin are now seeing visitors." With that, she leapt to the ceiling as a veritable throng of ninja surged towards the infirmaries. She scanned the crowd from above, feet firmly stuck to the ceiling, when she saw a flash of a white mane. Then it was gone, and the hospital doors swung shut. She grinned. She loved the thrill of the hunt. With a crunch, she propelled herself off the ceiling, flipping around in midair to land running out the door. Jiraiya was in for a doozy. The young Genin decided that they would visit Naruto last since, by all accounts, he had had the worst time of it. Rumor had spread somehow that Sasuke had confessed that Naruto was his best friend and then proceeded to try and carve his heart out. They all believed that Sasuke did not deserve visitors yet, and so they proceeded to see Naruto. Sakura led the way to Naruto's room, having just been told where it was by a particularly disgruntled Mednin. Sakura realized that all the hospital staff referred to Naruto as if the name had a bad taste to it. She shook it off as she almost took a wrong turn. "Focus, woman. Hell yeah, get your head in the game." She looked over her shoulder to see that the Genin had kept up. She counted them all. Shikamu, who was deemed well enough to make the rounds with them. Hinata, who looked ready to faint. Ino, who was staring ahead determinedly. And Shino, silent as ever. Sakura nodded in affirmation, then turned to open Naruto's door, which had suddenly appeared in front of her. "Why am I so distracted?" she wondered. "It's not as if something is wrong. How are you feeling, Naruto?" Sakura stayed her hand upon the handle. That was Tsunadesima. With Naruto, she whispered this information and made the shush motion with her finger. She motioned again to the door, and the Genin scrambled silently to listen at the frame. They were ninja, after all. Who could blame them? Besides, Ino whispered, "We all want to know if Naruto's okay, right?" Heads nodded their assent. And so they listened. And as they listened, their mouths slowly dropped lower and lower until they touched the floor. After Tsunade found Jiraiya and explained her plan, she immediately returned to the hospital to confront Naruto about his experience in the Valley of the End. She hoped he would be slightly less emotional than her last visit, but she didn't count on it. She still needed to know. However, paperwork was a pain, but mission reports were top priority. So, she had began. "I want the details of your fight with the traitor." Naruto stared ahead stonily. Then, without looking at Tsunade, Naruto began his narration. "I confronted Sasuke when we stood atop the two statues at the ends of the valley." He paused, then regained his momentum. "I leapt across and punched him, but all he did was spit blood at me." At this point, half of Sasuke's face was affected by the cursed seal. One of his eyes was this weird yellow. He took a breath and continued. "We fought for a little, but I held back because I didn't want to hurt him. Sasuke team took the opportunity to pound me into the ground. Eventually, I fought back. This was when he gored me here with the Chidori." He pointed, and Tsunade shivered. Dan was killed by a similar wound. Naruto must have deflected it at the last second. Her attention was brought back to Naruto, who had continued saying that's when I summoned more of the QB's churka than ever before. It healed all my wounds quickly and allowed me to beat the crap out of Sasuke. But he activated the next level of his Sharingan, I think, because then he was able to follow my every move. I didn't land a hit on him again until he petered off, hesitating. Was it okay to tell Tsunade what happened next? Tsunade was now wondering. This kid's pretty eloquent. Was he faking stupidity this whole time? Was it all just a mask? She motioned for Naruto to continue. He started, but decided that he could tell her anything, and it would be okay. However, Tsunadesima? She almost fainted at the name. It just didn't sound right coming from Naruto. He must want something truly important. Yes? He inhaled deeply. Promise me that you won't tell any of the other genin about this? She smiled. Of course not. But I expect you to tell them when you're ready. Agreed? He gave a fox-like grin. Agreed. He sobered up and explained. Sasuke killed me, oh bacon. He dropped me from the cliff onto the bottom of the valley head first. It snapped my neck. I remember it clearly. Seeing Tsunade's horrified look, he added, it still itches, too. Then, he scared her all the way to death. Then, Kyuubi overwhelmed me with power. The demonic churka covered my body and made me a tail. From then on, there's this haze, but I used more churka than my body could handle. It was like it had a life of its own, but I controlled it. Sasuke couldn't keep up and activated his cursed seal so that he became this winged beast. It was horrible, but I'm in no place to comment, nay? He sighed. The rest, you already know. We went at it with our best attacks, and I pulled my last punch so I wouldn't kill Sasuke. He glared suddenly. I regret it now. I'm not going to go after him and become like Sasuke team, but if I see him again, I will kill him. Sakura slumped to the ground, tears pouring down her eyes. The other genin, shocked into silence by the knowledge they had just gained, could only listen to Naruto's final thought. And that's a promise. Sakura gasped, then eeped as Ino's hand clamped over her mouth. Hinata shook her head, deactivating her Byakugan. It's too late, she said softly. Hokage-sama knows we're here. The genin exchanged scared looks. When she heard the noise, Tsunade started suddenly, then glanced at the door. Oh no. What is it, Bachan? Naruto asked cheerfully. Someone steal your sake? He frowned as Tsunade turned to face him, a look of utmost sorrow upon her face. Oh bacon? He asked fearfully. Naruto, Tsunade said. Go open the door for me, will you? Puzzled, he got up, wincing, and crossed to the portal. He pulled the latch and opened the door. He stared. Shikamaru, Shino, and Ino watched as his breath ceased. Hinata locked eyes with him. Naruto-kun, she whispered. He turned his gaze to Sakura, who cowered under his glare. Red churka seeped out of his skin, visible to all. He crouched, snarling. Naruto, Tsunade screamed. He leapt. Bum bum boom. Chapter 4, True Friends. He leapt forward. As he did, he saw the faces of his friends, the precious people he had come to rely on, more so than Iruka, Kakashi, or any of his senseis. They were his age, blissfully held unaware of his terrible burden by the Sandame's law. But now they knew. He saw their faces. He saw their fear. Wait, fear? Not anger or betrayal, but fear? Naruto almost halted in midair, rapidly ending his forward charge with a burst of churka. He landed, a glare still evident on his features, but held in check. Barely. He released the QB's chakra. That is, he fought it back into his system, and with a wince returned to normal. He stood erect, all traces of red gone from his cerulean eyes. He stared at the genin. They stared at him. Tsunade sighed once again. Was there no end to the suffering for this boy? They cleared her throat, and 6 heads whipped around to stare at her. She glared at them all. Well, you might as well come in and sit down, before Naruto tears your heads off. Ino gave a nervous giggle, but the rest remained silent as they walked into the room and sat on the only other bed in the room. Tsunade stood by the window, ready to intercept Naruto if he tried to attack again. Shikamaru's formidable brain was working overtime trying to make sense of the revelations that had been made. We had always been told that the QB was killed by the Yondaime, who sacrificed his life to save Konoha. But apparently the QB survived and is in human form? No, that doesn't make sense. Naruto is too generous and determined to be the QB. Which means his musings were interrupted by Ino, who dragged him in and sat him down next to her on the bed. Troublesome. Shino stared at Naruto, silent as ever, though it seemed he was content to wait and listen. Ino stared at the floor, ashamed of her actions. Hinata stared at Naruto openly, a slight blush staining her cheeks. Naruto-kun, please don't be angry. We just want to make sure you're okay. Sakura stared at Naruto as well. Her inner persona was, for the first time anywhere, lacking the words to say, having been shocked into silence. Amazingly, Hinata broke the silence. Naruto-kun, she began, but started as Naruto whipped his head up to gaze at her levelly. She sucked in a breath and continued. We just wanted to see if you were doing better. We all care about you, Naruto-kun. I wish I could tell you just how much. She sighed. We're sorry for eavesdropping. Shino and Shikamaru nodded assent, while Ino blushed. Sakura remained silent. Something had been ignited within her, something that frightened her, yet exhilarated her at the same time. She waited to hear what came next. Shikamaru addressed Naruto directly. Naruto, we're your friends. You have done so much for Konoha. We won't think any less of you no matter what you tell us. On my first mission, you tried more than anyone to make it a success. So please explain what you and Hokage-sama were talking about. Naruto's gaze had softened when Hinata spoke. She had touched the core of his soul, and he was thrilled. She always knows how to lift my spirits, he thought, thinking back to the Chunin exams. Shikamaru was right again, he realized. They were his precious people for a reason. They were strong. They were his friends. Naruto wiped away his tears. In a subdued monotone, he told the story of how the Kyuubi was essentially immortal, how it could not be killed, how the Yondaime, his hero, had sealed the demon inside Naruto's stomach, sacrificing his life to save the village. He told how Erashur had wanted Naruto to be accepted as a hero. He told them how, instead of accepting him, he was shunned, how parents refused to let their children play with him, how villagers would beat him and throw things at him. He stopped as he realized that the three kunoichi were in tears, and that Shino and Shikamaru were staring open-mouthed at him. He looked away, embarrassed, then suddenly lifted his shirt and channeled some chakra. The genin watched, amazed, as the seal which imprisoned the Kyuubi appeared on his navel. Naruto released the chakra and waited. Shino collected his wits. Naruto, I do not know you as well as the others do, but I can say this. I have not seen anything from you that is not worthy of the burden the Yondaime put on you. Naruto's face fell, but Shino said, the Yondaime chose wisely when he selected you to bear the Kyuubi. I give you my thanks, Naruto-san, for your sacrifice. Naruto stared and nodded his thanks to Shino, gratified that at least one had accepted him again. Ino sputtered, well, DUH. I mean, he kicked Niji's but in the Chunin exams. Of course Naruto's amazing. He blushed, but started at the sound coming from Hinata. Naruto-kun, she began. You are truly strong. I can't believe that you haven't destroyed this village and everyone in it for what they did to you. Yet you persevered. I can only hope that we can help you in the future. You are stronger than anyone I know, and I am proud to know you. She finished, blushing. Naruto almost wept right then and there. He glanced at the floor, then met Hinata's pearled gaze. Beautiful, he thought, then shook it off. Arigato. Hinata-kun, he mumbled. Hinata simply turned betrayed at the chan suffix recently added to her name and could not reply. Naruto turned to the only one who had not yet spoken. Sakura rose from her seat and approached Naruto. So the Kyuubi, the nine-tailed demon fox that killed my father and dozens of Konoha ninja, is inside you? He nodded dumbly. Sakura knelt down in front of him and sent a hand towards his face. Naruto shut his eyes, bracing himself for the slap that would cause him more pain than 1,000 Chidoras. However, he blinked rapidly when he realized that she was tracing the whisker marks on his cheeks. Sakura-kan, he stammered out, blushing, until he was pulled into a bone-crunching hug. Oh, Naruto, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I've treated you like trash all this time, and you had already suffered so much. She hiccuped and ceased sobbing, though the tears still fell. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Can you forgive me? She looked into his eyes, pleading emerald meeting ice cold blue. Naruto suddenly grinned. Of course, Sakura-can. Sakura gave a little laugh, then stopped when she remembered the last thing Naruto said. I regret it now. I'm not going to go after him and become like Sasuke team, but if I see him again, I will kill him. And that's a promise. Sakura backed away from Naruto and sat down. Naruto, if you see Sasuke again, she began, not realizing she had dropped the kun suffix. Are you really going to kill him? Naruto looked down at his bandages, then back at Sakura, ignoring the others. Sakura-can, I'm not going to hunt him down or anything. Sakura breathed a sigh of relief, but caught her breath at his next words. But if I meet him again, then yes. Yes, I will kill Sasuke team if I have to. Sakura looked deep into Naruto's eyes and realized that there was no stopping the blonde shinobi. Besides, he promised. Okay, Naruto, Sakura said, but when you do meet Sasuke, I will be with you. You won't have to do it alone. This I promise. Naruto was shocked by her words, but even more so when Shikamaru said, Naruto, I'll be right there with you. Can't leave you to such a troublesome confrontation alone with just a woman to help, can I? Though Ino shot him a glare that would have curdled milk, she gave her assent. What Shikamaru said, I'll be there for you, Naruto. We won't leave you alone again. Shino nodded. Naruto nodded back. Through that simple action, volumes were spoken. Shino would be there. Hinata smiled. Naruto, I will always be there for you. I hope you know that. Naruto smiled genuinely, and it melted Hinata's heart. Instead of the usual fox grin, here was a smile which radiated joy. She nodded once, then got up. Gomen, Naruto-kun, but it is late, and I must return to bring Niji back to the Hyuga house. The others brought forth similar reasons, and were ushered out by the Hokage, who turned before closing the door, whispering, Sakura, see me in my office. The kunoichi started, then smiled widely and ran off to the Hokage tower. Tsunade watched her go, then turned back to Naruto. Tsunade met his gaze evenly, honey brown meeting ocean blue. Told you so, she grinned, shutting the door on Naruto's protest. Naruto stared at the ceiling, having laid down for the night, thinking about what his new friends had just said to him. But mostly, the faces of Sakura and Hinata danced through his mind's eye. He groaned, but the groan quickly turned to a yelp as a small thump shook the room. What the? Wawa-aom. Hey! Naruto spun around to a familiar sight. There, standing atop an enormous toad, was the legendary Sannin himself. Hi there, Erosenin, Naruto yelled, as Jiraiya fell of the toad. He leapt up to the windowsill, bopping Naruto on the head. How many times do I have to tell you not to call me that? Naruto grinned cheekily. You won't live long enough to get them all, said Erosenin. Jiraiya sighed, then sat on the ledge, patting the area next to him. Naruto, taking a hint for once, jumped onto the sill and sat down next to Jiraiya. So, he boomed, turning to face the 13-year-old Jinchuriki. How'd you like to leave Konoha for 3 years to train under me? And with a resounding thump, Naruto landed on the ground outside the hospital. Grumbling, he gathered chakra to his feet and nonchalantly walked up the wall back to where Jiraiya sat, chuckling. Mama, he thought. The story Tsunade told me was true. Naruto managed to fight an entire battle while utilizing water walking. His control is accelerating rapidly. Good thing too, for what I have planned. Jiraiya's laugh turned evil, causing Naruto to elbow him in the ribs. Nay, Ero-sensei, when do we leave? Jiraiya face vaulted at the new title, but decided that at least he had apparently accepted him as his teacher. He grinned. Naruto, why do you want to become strong? Naruto looked out at a pitch-black sky filled with stars and answered, because I have to protect my precious people from Orochimaru and Akatsuki. Jiraiya stared in open wonder at the blonde shinobi, who grinned cheekily. Ero-sensei, I'm tired of acting stupid to get people's attention. I'm more attentive than even you thought, nay? Jiraiya glared at the boy, and then softened his gaze. That's a good reason, boy. You are truly strong, boy. Maybe there's hope for you yet. He got up and leapt back to the toad, waking it from a peaceful slumber. Pack your things, and meet me by the northern gate tomorrow morning at sunrise. Naruto saluted. OSU. Oh, wait. Jiraiya turned. What is it, boy? Naruto got up, puzzled. What is true strength? Jiraiya stared, then burst out laughing. Oh, my boy, he wheezed. If you don't know what it is that makes you strong now, when you do realize it, you will be unstoppable. Ha ha ha. And with that, the toad launched itself into the sky. Naruto climbed back into bed, pondering his new sensei's words. Then, it hit him like a ton of bricks. I'm going to be trained for 3 years by one of the legendary Sannin. He wondered aloud. He leapt from the vastly uncomfortable hospital bed and jumped out the window silently, his prankster's sense kicking in once more. He dashed across the rooftops silently, heading for his apartment with one thought in mind. Must pack ramen. Chapter 5, Part 1, Evil for Evil's Sake. Kaboom! Kabuto winced as yet another earth-shattering explosion shook the halls of Orochimaru's latest lair. It was that time of the week again, when Orochimaru and Uchiha Sasuke would spar. Orochimaru declared that if Sasuke could survive weekly spars with the snake Sannin, he would truly become strong. Sasuke was like clay in his hands. Honestly, Orochimaru-sama plays that boy like Mozart plays a piano. Kabuto exclaimed aloud. He paused in his scribing of a summoning scroll to wonder just who the hell Mozart was and why he thought of this person. Kabuto shrugged and went back to his ink. Orochimaru had asked him that he create a summoning scroll for Kusanagi, as pulling the sword from his mouth created too large of an opening in combat. Also, it would allow his future vessels to wield the sword without having to go through the trial manda the snake boss set forth, and that was Blaya. Kabuto cursed fluently and colorfully at the ink blot that appeared on the scroll. With a few hasty seals, he cleared it up and dipped his pen back into the chakra-infused ink. I hate Mondays, he thought bitterly. He could just imagine the scene right now. Orochimaru grinned as Sasuke rose from the floor panting. He was pleased at the boy's endurance, but he knew it was far off from his own, as he had yet to breathe heavily. Their spars consisted of a set pattern. For the first part, only ninjutsu and jinjutsu could be used by either one of them. Naturally, this was to increase Sasuke's store of jutsus and increase his hand seal speed. Orochimaru also stipulated that the Sharingan be active at all times, so that Sasuke's body would be used to have it activated at all times, except when he was sleeping and near the point of chakra depletion. Besides, the Sannin thought, I do so love gazing upon the fabled eye. Oh, was that a pun? He shrugged and gathered some chakra into his hands, molding it into water. With barely a thought, he thrust the chakra forward to split the fireball Sasuke had launched in his moment of contemplation. This was the other aspect of this duel that Orochimaru insisted upon, learning to mold chakra into the 5 natures rapidly to deflect jutsus. Even though Sasuke could use jutsus of all 5 natures, one could only mold the natures that one had affinity to for the process of blocking a jutsu with pure chakra. Needless to say, Orochimaru enjoyed flinging air jutsus at the lightning-oriented boy, though every now and then he remembered that he could also mold fire on command. Sasuke on his end gleaned no enjoyment from these duels except when Orochimaru used a new jutsu, which was copied and stored in the Uchiha Sharingan. Today, he had only seen one, and it wasn't very. Sasuke paused as Orochimaru held up a hand, signaling the end of part 1. Sasuke grinned. This was his favorite part of the day, taijutsu spar, no other jutsu allowed. It was the one area where Sasuke ever gained an advantage over the Sannin. In the jutsu duels he was constantly surviving, sometimes by the skin of his teeth, but with the Sharingan, he was almost unmatched in taijutsu. The only problem was that Orochimaru knew more taijutsu styles and techniques than he thought fathomable. Sasuke was reminded of this rather forcibly as he was ejected into the air by his sensei's boot. Sasuke groaned. Focus! He mentally screamed and twisted in midair to block the Sannin's combo. Good, Orochimaru thought. You advance marvelously. He attacked again. Kabuto rolled up the completed scroll, sealed it with a minor jutsu, and put it aside. He then began writing a message to his other benefactors, ones far more powerful than Orochimaru, though that gap was slowly being closed. I hope Itachi still advances in strength. I hate losing bets, Kabuto muttered. Achoo. I beg your pardon? It was nothing. Oh, okay then, said Deidara, swiftly backing away from the reedied man who came close to ruling them all. Itachi cursed under his breath. He hated sneezing. It was uncontrollable and left one wide open to attack by any competent ninja, the only ones worth worrying about. He continued to pace his room back and forth, plotting and planning just how to acquire the bijou trapped within Uzumaki Naruto. He recalled his conversation with Kisame just before their first attempt. You may be able to fight him evenly, but I cannot, Kisame said. You are right, Itachi agreed. Though even if I were to fight him, I would lose. If we both fought him, in the best-case scenario we would kill him, but we also would die. Itachi looked up into the sun. Even if we had more men, the result would be the same. Kisame turned to face Itachi. His caretaker is the legendary Sannin. Itachi cursed. For all his power, for all his commander's power, that stupid blonde idiot possessed more than any mortal on earth. Now that he was being trained by Jiraiya, he would only learn how to control that power. Once that moment of control came, Naruto-kun's power would increase exponentially as the barrier to controlling his own chakra, which was rapidly assimilating the Kyuubi's chakra, would be torn down. He could kill any one of us that he pleased, he muttered. Then, it hit him like a ton of dango. The idea began to form inside Itachi's mind, and he grabbed it. He took 2, added 2, and got 4. Then proceeded to do all sorts of other equally complex mathematics until the finished plan lay in his mind's eye, more beautiful to Itachi than anything he had ever dreamed. Without a second's hesitation, he twisted the ring on his finger and teleported to his leader, who was reclining in a chair. Hey Itachi, he greeted, as if he was expecting him. He probably was. Itachi inclined his head, and then said, I have found a solution to the Kyuubi problem. Sharingan stared into the red eyes of the leader. Good. Might I inquire as to what it is? Itachi grinned, and it was more terrifying than anything the leader had ever seen. He wondered just how powerful Itachi was. I'll give you a hint, Itachi said monotonously, thought the grin remained. We need to recover Orochimaru's ring. Red eyes widened, then shut as Itachi's leader threw back his head and laughed. Chapter 5 Be the Dancing Leaves. Thwop thwop. Thwop bap 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 up. Thwop thwop blam. The taijutsu log which Hinata had been pounding away at for the past few seconds shattered under the force of her rapid strikes. Niji sighed. Hinata-sama, if... Niji, how many times have I told you not to call me that? Call me Hinata Mudakin at least. Hinata cheerfully interrupted. Honestly, for a guy with the best eyes in Konoha, your ears sure could use some tuning. Niji chuckled resignedly. Very well, Hinata Mudakin. But as I was saying, if you keep blowing up Lee's special taijutsu logs, he may very well get mad at us. Hinata grinned uncharacteristically. Mad enough to attack me? She questioned innocently. I wouldn't want that. I've only been trying to get him to fight me for the past 10 weeks. She finished sarcastically. Maybe that grin isn't so uncharacteristic after all, thought Niji. He laughed and said, well, if you must know there's a reason he hasn't accepted your challenge yet. Hinata sucked in her breath and stood squarely, hands at her sides. Oh, it wouldn't have to do with the conversation I saw you two having in the forest a few weeks ago? Damn it. Niji cursed silently. Hinata, you were a mile away at the training ground. Did you sneak up on us? Niji's eyes widened when she shook her head, a proud smile gracing her angelic features. Soft blue hair bounced playfully around her head until Hinata stilled her head shaking as she pointed to her eyes. Amazing, Niji whispered. How did you see that far? He wondered aloud. Simple. All you have to do is concentrate the churka in your eyes and shape it into a fine point in the direction you want to see. Not very useful for combat, but an excellent scouting technique. Hinata finished gleefully. Niji shook his head in wonder. 3 years. 3 years of intense training, and Hinata was ready to surpass him. Amazing, Imudakan. But your ears are no better than mine. Hey. And so here's what I said. Lee, if Hinata ever beats me in a spar, will accept her challenge? And he said yes. Hinata's eyes widened as Niji fell into the Jukin stance. Well, Hinata-Nayakin, just how badly do you wish to fight Lee? Wordlessly and motionlessly, Hinata activated her Byakugan. She leapt into motion, hurling 3 kunai at her cousin, who caught one and used it to deflect the others. Wait a minute. He though rapidly. I've seen that opening move before. Naruto. Oddly enough, that name ran through Niji's and Hinata's minds as their hands met in a burst of churka. Naruto-kun, Hinata thought as she parried Niji's riposte, nimbly spinning around while leaning forward to deliver a vicious kick to Niji's head, which was blocked and turned aside. Naruto-kun, this is for you. Hinata recovered her footing and jumped away as Niji slammed into the ground with a high kick. Both Hyuga had been developing ways to add more moves to the Jukin combat style, as it tended to be 2 one-dimensional no-kicks meant an easy taijutsu opening, one they knew someone like Lee would be all too happy to exploit. Hinata rushed Niji again, left leading and right held in check behind her back. Her right palm shot forward like a bullet, only to be parried by Niji, who struck back with his right. Hinata smiled and caught his hand with her outstretched left. Niji's eyes widened as she pulled him forward, elbows sailing into his stomach. He oofed as he found himself sailing over Hinata's head as she threw him. He flipped in midair to land on his feet to face Hinata's next charge. She's fast, he thought. Time to take it up a notch. Unfortunately for Niji, the same thought once again ran through Hinata's mind. She met Niji, and the rapid pish-pish of Jukin strikes reverberated throughout the training ground. From his vantage point high above the battle, Rock Lee watched as the strikes began to land so rapidly the Hyuga's hands began to blur. Amazing. I am no longer sure who I would like to fight more, my old rival Niji or Hinata. He returned his attention to notice Hinata hurtling through the air, arm pointed forward like a spear. Niji grinned and initiated the Kaiten. Hinata was flung away, but managed to land on her feet some 20 feet away. Her eyes widened as she observed the crater Niji now stood in. Niji, your Kaiten is almost as big as father's, she exclaimed. Niji grinned and charged Hinata. I'm not all defense and Muto. Now it's your turn. He launched a combo, which Hinata, instead of parrying the blows, weaved gracefully in and out of Niji's strikes, causing them all to miss by 3 hairs' breadth. Hinata focused all her churka, feeling it mold inside her system. She jumped away, and as she predicted, Niji came running forward. Hakurokuji Yinshu. Divination Shield, 64 strikes. She simply smiled, then shouted out Niji's coffin nails. Shugo Hakurokuji Yanshu. Guardian of the 8 Seals, 64 strikes. Niji almost halted in surprise. What is this move? It's not in any Jukin scroll I've ever read. He had no choice but to begin striking Hinata's Tenketsu. Now, Hinata's technique normally created strings of churka which she, using her unparalleled flexibility, would swing about with feet firmly on the ground. Amazing how observing a simple Gatsuga can inspire. By forcing herself to keep using the technique while at the same time avoiding Kiba and Akamaru's famous attack, she learned to increase the flexibility of her secret move even more. The result was devastating. Niji shot 2 strikes at Hinata in rapid succession, but they were deflected just as quickly, if not faster, by Hinata's chakra lasers. As she spun away, Niji spotted his next targets and struck again. Hinata halted her spin and swiped upwards, arms almost windmilling, to send Niji's chakra-filled hands upwards as well with repeated hits. Hinata smiled, almost evilly, before whipping her arms towards Niji, using her chakra beams like knives to slice into Niji over and over again, her speed rivaling Lee's lotus. 64. Hinata yelled, before planting her feet and assuming the Jukin stance once again. Her breathing, heavy and labored, smoothed and became slower. Niji had been blown away by the power of the counterattack. He skidded on his back before coming to a rest. He struggled to a standing position once again and did a quick self-diagnosis. Almost all of his chakra system had been shredded to hell. Sure, it would repair within a few minutes, but his more powerful techniques would cause his system to temporarily shut down if he tried to use him. He realized that if Hinata wanted to, She could have killed him with that last attack. She must be able to control the keenness and diameter of those chakra beams. Niji thought. He held up his head just in time to stop Hinata's next charge. I surrender, Imuto. You win this time, he finished with a grin. Hinata returned it. Anytime you are ready, Nizan, so am I, she proclaimed. And I don't take back my words. That's my Nindo. Lee chuckled before leaping away. If we were to fight, I can honestly say I have no idea who would win. Amazing, Hinata-san. You have become so strong. Ah, Konoha, you have truly recovered, Tsunade said proudly as she read the day's reports. Konoha's economy was thriving once more, and ninja levels had almost returned to normal. With the assurance of Jiraiya that they were safe from attack for a few years, Tsunade had directed all of her resources towards returning Konoha to its former glory. She leaned back in her chair and produced a bottle of sake, seemingly out of thin air. Pouring herself a cup, she allowed her mind to think back on her latest 3 years as Hokage. She had known the minute Sakura walked into her office that day 3 years ago that she was going to ask to be trained. Tsunade had confronted Sakura after Naruto's departure and told her that though she didn't expect her to survive, Tsunade would take on Sakura as her apprentice. However, Sakura had done more than survive. She had thrived throughout Tsunade's vicious training and was approaching the Hokage's level, though she still had a ways to go, especially in terms of stamina. Sakura had always had a weak stamina, and now she had just caught up with the average ninja her age. Average was not a word in Tsunade's vocabulary. She grinned demonically as she thought about the next challenge that awaited Sakura. But Sakura's not the only one who's improving, she mused as she sipped the sweet liquor. All of the genin that Naruto had known and met had advanced in leaps and bounds, though one in particular stood out above the rest. Hyuga Hinata. Whatever was driving that girl, Tsunade wanted some of it. She had gone from being a shy, quiet kunoichi to a fierce, joyful spirit with the strength to back it up. Tsunade had just found out from a very proud Hyuga Hayashi that Hinata had defeated Niji in a duel. Tsunade wondered just how much the Hyuga household had changed after Naruto defeated Niji in the Chunin exam. Niji smiled much more often and was frequently found laughing with Lee, Hinata, and especially Tintin, though he tended to blush in her company almost as much as he smiled. Hyuga Hayashi also smiled more often, and Hinata had finally gained his approval as well as confidence in herself and her abilities. When Naruto had departed the village at dawn, all the genin he had met, plus Tsunade and Irika, were there to see him off. Tears in his eyes, Naruto met all of his friends' eyes. I'll come back, and I'll be stronger than ever. That's a promise, he said, holding back sobs. Before he turned to go, Sakura, Lee, and Niji stopped him. Sakura had given him a hug. Come back soon, she whispered, and I'll be stronger. Lee had given him the nice guy pose and a set of white armbands, and Niji had simply smiled and shook his hand. Then, Naruto had waved and dashed off after Jiraiya, who had already started walking. Before he got too far, though, Hinata had ran out after him and stopped him again. Before her mind could catch up to her body, she had given him a fierce hug, shoved some ointment into his hands, and ran back to rejoin the others. Naruto had blushed, muttered arigato, and went ahead to Jiraiya, who was shaking his head with laughter. Naruto, Tsunade thought. You change people for the better wherever you go. You'll make a fine Hokage someday. Tsunade pictured Naruto in her position, a mountain of paperwork looming over his blonde locks. She laughed helplessly. Oh well, she thought. Comes with the job. She lifted a toast to the #1 most surprising ninja and downed the rest of the sake. Hinata walked along the road to the Hyuga house, humming a happy tune and gazing at the sky. To say that she had forgotten Naruto would be to say that she had forgotten her Nindo. Instead of letting Naruto fade from her mind's eye, he had intensified. She drew upon the memory of him for strength and sought to emulate what made her admire him. His confidence, his kindness, his never-ending loyalty and strength. In the end, Hinata fulfilled her wish and changed herself. She had matured into a strong young woman of 16 in many different ways, and was excited by the prospect of Naruto's return. Instead of blushing and fainting, and she was wont to do in his presence, Hinata planned to gain Naruto's attention and trust. Her admiration of him had turned into more than that. But Hinata was not yet ready to face these new, unfamiliar feelings. For whenever she thought of the blonde shinobi, her heart fluttered and ached to be with him once again. She wanted to spend time with him and get to know him better. She wanted to show him that she was strong. Lost in her thoughts, she looked up only to realize that her legs had taken her to the north gate of Konoha, the very same gate by which Naruto had left the village promising to return. She sighed softly and turned to leave when she heard a rustle from the forest. She spun around, activating her Byakugan, and began to scan the forest, searching for the source of the noise. Narrowing her chakra into a point, she stared at the path leading away from Konoha. She saw two figures, one tall and large, the other just tall. The tall one was rapidly speeding towards her. Hinata squared herself into the Jukin stance and waited for the unidentified person to reach her. When he came into sight and hearing, she almost went back on her word and fainted. For skidding to a stop in front of her was a tall, blonde, muscled young man with a Konoha Hitai and 3 pairs of whisker marks on his cheeks. "Boy, I sure could use some ramen." Aye. He finished lamely as he finally realized who was standing in front of him, eyes wide and mouth open in shock and happiness. "Hinata-kun?" With a squeal of joy, she ran towards Naruto until she was wrapped into a quick hug by the blonde Hokage taupe. "Naruto-kun," she yelled, muffled though she was by Naruto's chest. Blushing softly, she pulled away to look at Naruto. His deep blue eyes shone with happiness that made Hinata's heart melt. "I really missed Konoha, Hinata-kun," he declared happily, eyes twinkling with wisdom far beyond his years. Dizzy with ecstasy, Hinata realized that Naruto was blushing profusely. "I gotta run and see the Hokage with Ero Sensei Hinata, but I want to see all my friends again next. Can you get everyone together and tell them to meet me at Ikiraku Ramen?" Hinata nodded her head vigorously. Naruto nodded once, then brought his hands together in a ram seal, but he was stopped by Hinata's hand. "Naruto-kun?" "Yeah, Hinata-kun?" She thought briefly about asking him why he missed her most of all, more than Sakura-san, even, or of asking him any number of questions, but realized that they would all be answered in time. Instead, she hugged him gently. "Welcome back, Naruto-kun," she said softly as she pulled away. Naruto smiled, and Hinata was thrilled to see a genuine smile in place of the fake grin he used to wear. Naruto's hands blurred together, and he disappeared even faster. Tsunade lowered her cup in disbelief. "Yandame," she whispered as she saw the tall blonde ninja in front of her, flanked by her old teammate Jiraiya. "Hey there, Bachan. Did ya miss me?" Naruto exclaimed. Tsunade could only smile as the tears rolled down her cheeks. Chapter 6 Training. Tsunade walked around from behind her mountain of paperwork to get a better look at whom she considered a son. Spiky blonde locks tumbled in a mass around his head, reaching down around his shoulders. A face with high cheekbones accentuated by long, black whisker marks sat on proud shoulders. Deep, wise, blue eyes which shone with happiness gazed back at Tsunade. She noticed absent-mindedly that Naruto seemingly finished growing. All traces of baby fat were gone from his body, and only toned muscle remained. Reaching 6 feet tall, Naruto cut quite a handsome figure. "Poor guy'll have to beat the ladies off with a stick," Tsunade thought amusedly. She pulled him into a quick but firm hug. "Welcome back, brat," she drawled as she sat back down at her desk. She didn't fool Naruto, though, who could see the genuine happiness in her eyes. "Well, Bachan I." Crash. With a resounding boom, the door to the Hokage's office blew open, and charged more ninja than Naruto had ever seen in one room. Shino, who was taller and in his new black trench coat, looked more mysterious than ever, eyebrows raised at Naruto, who now towered over him. Naruto swore he saw him smile. Lee, still outfitted in his crazy green spandex, immediately assumed the nice guy pose, thumb prominently pointed up. Naruto perceived a buzzing energy about the boy, but couldn't place where it came from. "That boy is powerful," Kit mumbled a deep voice which only Naruto could hear. Yeah, Naruto thought back. He continued his appraisal of the new arrivals. He noted Hinata, absent-mindedly staring at him. He waved, she blushed, and met his eyes, which were already moving. Kakashi was quietly shutting the door, and when he turned around his eye was closed and a grin visible underneath his two masks. Ino and Shikamaru stood remarkably close together, but while Ino seemed to be enjoying it, Shikamaru was gazing out the window, presumably at the clouds. Naruto finally laid eyes on Sakura. Wow, he thought. I've heard of girls changing over the summer, but wow. Hinata, Sakura, and Ino had done the natural thing in the 3 years Naruto had gone away. They had grown up. They had filled out considerably and were probably looking like they would for the next few decades. Naruto whistled in his mind. He also saw Neji and Tenten, who nodded slightly. Naruto then turned his attention to the group as a whole. He smiled widely. "Hi," he shouted, as the others covered their ears. Tsunade hid a smile behind her hand. "So," Naruto began, approaching Sakura. "Are you strong enough? Not gonna hold me back anymore?" he asked playfully as he jabbed her arm gently. The jab never landed as Sakura swung her other hand around to grab Naruto's firmly. Naruto's eyes widened, then almost popped out of their sockets as he was pulled into a bone-crunching hug. "Oof," he exclaimed muffly. "I missed you, Dobe," Sakura muttered. She pushed him away slightly, a light blush gracing her cheeks which Naruto dismissed. His friends had huddled together at this point and broke apart to reveal Shino, Hinata, Shikamaru, Sakura, Ino, Neji, and Lee bearing an ornate wooden box. It was plated with gold, and inscribed on the top was a single word. Uzumaki. Naruto read silently. "We found this one day buried in the archives," Naruto, Tsunade said. "They're not sure where it came from, but it does have your name on it. This is your homecoming present, but don't open it here. You'll want to open it when you get settled into your new house." Naruto picked his jaw up off the floor. "House, box, anything else I should know about?" "Well," Neji began, "everyone in this room wants to fight you, but other than that not much." He finished grinning. Naruto stared at him as if he had two heads. "Yes, Naruto, it's me, Neji. A lot has changed since you were gone, but you'll hear it later. For now, tell us what you did the past few years." Choruses of "yeah" and "hurry up" assailed Naruto's ears. He glanced out the window, catching a certain white-haired man's eye on the rooftop next door. The white-haired man nodded. Satisfied, Naruto turned around and said, "Well, grab a seat everyone, because this is a long story." When they did so, he suddenly flared his chakra. The entire office shook with the immense force of Naruto's chakra. So much power was emanating from him that everyone's hair was blown away by the force. Naruto ceased and said, "That's the result of my 3-year training." And so he began. "As you might already know, Jiraiya of the legendary Sannin took me away from Konoha for a training trip which was to last 3 years. Along the way he outlined his plans. At the end of 3 years, my chakra control would match Tsunadesima's, my strength and speed would be greater than I could ever imagine, and my stamina would be unmatched by anyone. Naturally, I was excited at first, but soon that feeling evaporated. You don't acquire those skills in 3 years by taking it slow. Ero Sensei ground me into the dirt with control techniques, new ninjutsu, and taijutsu practice every day. This was in addition to the history tutoring I was given along with severe psychological and emotional training. Frankly, it sucked. I was trapped between a rock and a hard place. I refused to give up, but I also realized that I would soon die of chakra exhaustion if I didn't do something fast. I asked why we weren't building my stamina, but he always deflected my questions. Then it happened. Naruto lifted up his shirt, causing the girls to blush at his weltoned abs. He gathered his chakra, amazing them all again at the sheer, controlled power he exhibited. Sakura noticed it first. Hesitantly, she asked, "Naruto, where's your seal?" He grinned. "There's no need for it anymore," he said smugly. "They say you shouldn't mess with demons, but I was pretty desperate at the time." I asked myself, who had more chakra than any being known to man? Whose chakra is so powerful that it affects the outside world without even needing to be formed? Who's living inside my stomach? "The Kyuubi," Sakura whispered. "Naruto, Kyuubi didn't get loose, did he?" Naruto laughed. "No, but he tried. Closest I ever came to dying too, let me tell ya." They gasped. Neji activated his Byakugan and looked closely at Naruto's chakra system. It seemed perfectly normal, nothing at all like what he witnesses during the Chunin exam. Naruto, what happened to your red chakra? He asked, deactivating his Kekai Genkai. I can't detect any trace of it in your chakra system. Naruto grinned. You'll have to check again, Niji, because I think you're quite mistaken. Puzzled, Niji reactivated his Byakugan and immediately scrunched his eyes shut. Hinata, wondering what could possibly be causing Niji to cringe, also activated the Byakugan. Before she was forced to close her eyes from the sheer intensity of Naruto's chakra, she noticed its great abundance and its unnatural red color, almost demonic in nature. Hinata, what have I done to my chakra? Naruto asked patiently, knowing she had figured out his secret. She frowned. It seems that you've converted it into this red chakra. I'm not saying you're a demon, Naruto, but that chakra is definitely demonic. Naruto sighed. Well, Hinata, you're correct on every account, including the demon part. Shikamaru frowned. Naruto, you absor. Shoo. Naruto interrupted. You'll ruin the story. He complained childishly, causing Sakura to giggle. Oh, Naruto, she thought. You've changed so much and yet not at all. The best way to change. I basically confronted the QB in my own mindscape. It was like a big cavern-type room with a giant cage that had a little piece of paper with a seal on it. Ero-sensei had actually just finished telling me how the seal that the Yondaime created was completely unknown. Not even Old Man Sandaime knew exactly what it did. So I tried to find out. I said, Fox, I want you to try and escape. I'll bet you can't. He laughed. The ancient demon, for all his wisdom, couldn't deny the challenge for freedom. He immediately began slamming against the cage with all his might. But as soon as he did, I tried to gather some of his chakra. Tsunade's eyes widened. Naruto. Naruto turned around and grinned. It's okay, Bachan. I told you QB's not loose or anything. He refocused. Basically, as QB was ripping the cage a new one, he completely missed the fact that I was somehow draining chakra from him. It literally seeped out from the cage and into me. This was like after a year of training, so I had grown a little, and my own chakra apparently equaled the fox's. Ero, Sensei said something about the seal helping QB merge with me, yada yada yada. Shikamaru was amazed that even someone like Naruto couldn't appreciate the wisdom of a legendary Sannin. Anyways, Naruto continued. Unlike other times when after I accessed the QB's chakra, it would go away, this time it didn't. It stayed inside my own chakra system. It was a really weird feeling, as if I overdosed on soldier pills or something. Anyways, the QB is getting smaller and smaller, and in this cavern, I'm getting more and more charged on chakra. Thanks to Jiraiya's tortuous control training, I had no problem assimilating the chakra and keeping it there. Eventually, the QB just walked through the bars of the cage and looked up at me with the most evil glare he could muster. Naruto laughed. The only problem was that he was the cutest little nine-tailed fox I ever saw. Everyone tried to imagine a cute little QB. Everyone did a little throw up in their mouths. Naruto caught their grimaces and hurried on. In a nutshell, I got all of QB's chakra permanently, and he no longer has any sort of body. He exists only as a consciousness. Sometimes he speaks to me. I think he's warmed up to my cheerful personality. Snort whatever, brat. Naruto went on unperturbed. However, when I tried to summon the chakra, I realized I couldn't get it red. Only normal human chakra was stored in my body, or so I thought. Here's a question. How do ninja use elemental jutsu? Sakura chimed in. The ninja changes the form, or shape, and the nature of the chakra, just like energy can be converted from electricity to sound in a walkie-talkie. Naruto nodded. At first, when Jiraiya taught me techniques, I could use water and wind. Now, I can only use wind techniques, but I have an element that no one will ever have. Realization struck Niji. You can form your chakra into demonic chakra. Naruto nodded exuberantly. What's more, it is no longer detrimental to use it. It doesn't hurt me, and it wears me out half as slowly as regular chakra. I think that was another intent of Yondaime's seal, that using my demon's chakra eventually wouldn't hurt me. He smiled widely. All of the techniques known in this room don't equal the amount I know now. Most of them are based on using pure chakra, like Niji's, Hinata's, and Lee's, but I do have a ton of wind techniques. He looked at Lee directly. I want to fight you, fuzzy brows. My taijutsu is incredible now, modesty aside, but I want to see what real taijutsu combat is all about. Shino finally spoke. Naruto, as strong as you are, I honestly don't think you stand a snowball's chance in hell against Lee. Not a single ninja in this village aside from Hokage and Kakashizuma can defeat him. Lee has finally achieved his goal and defeated Neji, though the battle lasted several hours. Naruto's smile widened, then even more when Neji said, perhaps you should fight me or Hinata-nichan first. I'm always game for a rematch, but Hinata just beat me in a duel. Maybe you'd like to try a fight with her? Then he leered. Or are you afraid of hitting girls like Shikaken? He jibed. Naruto only grinned. Neji, you have no idea how many kunoichi tried to fight me over the past few years. He looked at Hinata, as if to say, well? Hinata was staring at the ground, but when she looked up her eyes were shining and her hands were trembling with anticipation. If you can beat me, Naruto-kun, you can fight Lee-san. Do you agree, Lee Naruto? Lee smiled. I will gladly face Naruto in the fires of youth if he defeats you, Hinata-san. Though after witnessing your battle today, I wonder if I will get the chance. Naruto's eyes widened again, but he quickly smiled once more. I accept your challenge, Hinata-kun. See you at the training grounds. He quickly formed the dragon seal and poofed away. Hinata paled, then looked at her friends. Does anyone here know how to teleport, yet besides Kakashizuma? Everyone shook their heads while Kakashi chuckled. Hinata, what have you gotten yourself into? He said jovially. Hinata just started for the door determinedly. I don't care, she said. I'm going to show Naruto that I am truly strong. She glanced back at her friends, who hurriedly followed her out the door, followed by Tsunade. This is going to be good, she thought. After all, it is the Hokage's job to personally know all of her ninja, and Hinata was no exception. Tsunade knew that Hinata would pull no punches in this fight. She wanted to prove to Naruto that she was worthy of his attention. Tsunade checked to make sure everyone had left her office, then locked the door. With a slight grin, she whipped her hands into the ram seal and vanished in a poof of smoke. Some minutes later, Hinata found herself squared off against the object of her admiration, the blonde shinobi grinning slightly. Ready, Hinata-kun? She nodded. Good. He closed his eyes, and when he reopened them, they were bright red. Then let us fight. He disappeared. Naruto disappeared, after tossing his new box to Tsunade, who caught it deftly. He's fast, thought Hinata as she activated her Byakugan. I couldn't even see his afterimage. Suddenly, she spotted something in the trees behind her. She whirled around to focus, and saw dozens of tiny balls of chakra being hurled at her. They were blinding for a moment, but her eyes readjusted to see that Naruto had seemingly thrown a bunch of rocks at her. Rocks with chakra. Uho, Hinata mumbled. In an explosion of smoke, the pebbles burst, revealing to Hinata about 20 shadow clones charging towards her. She smiled and destroyed the first two that reached her before they could react with two well-placed hits. The rest of the clones attacked, and Hinata fended them off. However, whenever she tried to strike one of them again with a burst of chakra, instead of blocking, the clones dodged, and they were fast. But Hinata wasn't stupid. She simply increased her speed until she could match the clones' incredible agility. Still, it took her a while to get rid of them all, and she became extremely worried as to what Naruto had concocted in the time it took. As the smoke from the last exploded clone dissipated, Hinata scanned the surrounding forest frantically, looking for any sign of chakra, when a human-shaped blob of the energy appeared within her vision and began walking towards her. Hinata turned to face it, a determined look set in her face. She suddenly yelped in pain as Naruto flared his chakra, molding it into demonic form at the same time. The result blinded Hinata and forced her to deactivate her Byakugan. Naruto began to run, no expression visible on his face, as though he had locked his emotions up tight. He reached Hinata leading with his right fist. She simply tilted her head to the left and dodged, bringing up her own palms and concentrating chakra to them. She lashed out with a 1-2 combo to Naruto's left shoulder, but he swatted them away with his left, then sent it flying towards her face. She dropped to the ground, But instead of attempting the customary sweep with her legs, she went into a handstand and spun into a helicopter kick. Unfortunately, Naruto simply caught one of her ankles as he dodged the blows. Hinata's eyes widened as she was lifted off the ground, Naruto still only using one hand. He then brought his other hand to hold her leg as he slammed her ruthlessly into the ground. Hinata's breath whooshed out of her. Reactivating her Byakugan, she quickly rolled to the side and flipped back to stand, dodging the Rasengan Naruto had just aimed at her. Meanwhile, their friends watched with something close to horror. Naruto has been in control of this fight the whole time, Tsunade wondered. Neither of them has even really started to fight, but Naruto has been absolutely ruthless. He's truly become a shinobi, but I hope his heart is still as big as ever. Tsunade was brought out of her musings by a resounding crash as Naruto slammed into a tree, bending it in half. Hinata released a slow, even breath and settled back into a ready stance, having just used her guardian hack to fling Naruto away. 1-1, thought Lee. Now the real battle begins. Show me your strength, Naruto. Naruto shook himself, much like a dog getting dry, then showed his first emotion since the battle started. He grinned. Sorry, Hinata. I know you're strong and everything, but I really want to fight Lee. I'm gonna end this now. Hinata stared at Naruto as a small smile spread across her face. Naruto, I'm disappointed in you. Naruto's grin evaporated like water in the desert. You've always said to never underestimate someone, yet here you are thinking Lee is stronger than I am, Hinata continued. Well? She disappeared to reappear right in front of Naruto, palm buried in his stomach. I am, she finished triumphantly. Naruto poofed out of existence. Hinata paled and jumped straight up as a hail of shuriken shot from out of the surrounding woods in a perfect circle, with Hinata at center. As soon as she was airborne, more shuriken flew out of the trees, seeking Hinata. I've never tried hack in midair before, she mused quickly. She began flipping in midair, activating her chakra beams to slice apart the impending shuriken. Once they were all gone, Hinata landed safely to find Naruto 5 meters away. There's a reason Kage Bunshin is a kenjutsu, a forbidden technique, he began. Hinata cut him off by shooting a chakra beam directly at his heart, hoping secretly he would dodge the lethal blow and only be injured in another area. He took it straight on and disappeared. Hinata spun around to see Naruto, or a clone. She wondered wildly, standing again not 5 meters away. Everything a clone does during its lifespan is transferred to the originator once it is dispelled, he continued, as if he was never interrupted. Also, clones have their own chakra system and all the accessories of the original. Train them to dodge an enemy's attack, and you have a personal soldier. He grinned. The only problem was that, up until me, no one had enough chakra to use it liberally. Now, Naruto left it hanging in the air. Hinata returned Naruto's smile. Well, then I'll just have to find the original the hard way, she said happily. Naruto's eyes widened as Hinata raced through a few seals. When she finished, dozens of Hinatas shimmered into existence around her. Naruto laughed. Water clones made directly from water vapor. It takes almost no chakra, too. That's amazing, Hinatakin. He closed his eyes briefly and opened his new red ones. As if on cue, his veritable army of clones emerged from the forest to gather behind Naruto. With a seal they were dispelled, Hinata did the same. Their audience was frozen. The final showdown was about to begin. Naruto raised his hand before Hinata could charge him. Hinata, he began. Hinata started at the absence of the recently added chan suffix. She waited, breath held in. Naruto set his face into a mask of expressionless features. Don't hold back anymore, he warned, and shot forward. Hinata nodded, matching his stride. As one they attacked, fluidly blocking the other's fists and palms as they struck one another. Naruto pivoted on his back foot and suddenly stopped, shooting his foot out towards Hinata's stomach. She could only spin away as the blow whipped by her. Had she tried to catch it, she probably would be on the ground spitting up blood. She recovered, and they began their deadly dance once again, Naruto enhancing his speed and strength with demonic chakra, Hinata using her Byakugan and Juken. Individual blows became meaningless. For a few minutes, there was only strike, strike, parry, riposte, parry, and strike again. Sometimes blows were not even finished, hands touching gently before being whipped into the next attack. Naruto began to alter his attacks, trying to lead Hinata to shift to the left. She did, and he flipped over her head suddenly, spinning at the same time to kick the back of her head. With cat-like reflexes and the aid of the Byakugan, she flipped forward in time to bring her foot to meet his, propelling both of them away. They landed several meters apart. Hinata, panting slightly, was amazed that Naruto had yet to take a deep breath. His battle stamina is incredible. I have to take it up to the final notch now, she decided. Hinata began forming seals slowly and deliberately, slowing her breathing to normal. Naruto stared calmly as she brought her hands together in the final dragon seal, and then brought her hands straight out away from her body and pointing away from each other, like she was going to start flapping. Naruto examined her palms closely and noticed a slight glow. His demonic vision was able to see Hinata's ninjutsu activate, and then he didn't need it. Visible chakra beams were emitting from her palms, but extended only a few feet out. They also did not dissipate. Naruto suspected that her seals enabled her chakra to have a greater permanence. Hinata opened her eyes, Byakugan meeting demonic sight. Naruto-kun, you cannot escape this attack no matter how fast you are. Please surrender. Naruto sighed. Hinata perked up at the sound of the added Chan. I no longer wish to win. Now I wish to fight. He finished with a smile. Naruto's chakra flared again, and Hinata briefly wondered if she had gotten in over her head. She brushed the thought aside and concentrated on Naruto's latest technique. Remember how I said most of my new techniques were chakra manipulation? He asked. Hinata nodded. Well, 9 chakra, tails was the best word Hinata could come up with emerged from Naruto's body. They looked corporeal, but she noticed they were slightly transparent. So it's that chakra that can directly affect the physical world without needing additional molding, Hinata realized. Naruto's body began to glow an eerie red. He charged Hinata once again. It was all she could do to block Naruto's chakra appendages. What she lacked in quantity, she made up for with her fluid flexibility. She nimbly commanded her body to weave in and out of Naruto's strikes, while managing to counterattack every now and then. However, she knew that she would lose. Naruto was too fast, too strong, too powerful, too smart. She should surrender and just. No, I will not give up. Naruto will never respect me if I give up now. With renewed vigor, Hinata swept away Naruto's tails, and with a flurry of slashed cut as many apart as she could. When she spun around to face him again, she was delighted to see that he couldn't replace them right away and was left with only 2. He grinned. Scorpion style, 2 tails. He arched his remaining tails over his head, just like a scorpion's stinger. Hinata began to frantically weave a shield as he began to strike with pinpoint accuracy at her body, tails speeding in and away like bullets. Naruto had his concentration solely on his attack, but he still noticed the incredible control Hinata had to create this shield. Obviously, she had left most of their friends behind in terms of strength, but how? Suddenly, Naruto remembered the words Haku, the deceased Nukenin from the mist that Kakashi had inadvertently slain in their battle with the demon of the mist, Zabuza of the 7 shinobi swordsmen. Do you have someone important that you wish to protect? Haku had asked innocently. Yeah, I have a few precious people, yeah? Naruto had asserted. Haku smiled. Work hard to protect them, fight for them, and you will become truly strong. Truly strong. Naruto muttered as he directed his attacks to the center of Hinata's shield. His tails were regenerating quickly. They would be ready to come out again soon. Hinata had obviously found someone precious to fight for, but whom? Naruto felt a slight twinge in his heart that he couldn't even begin to identify. Shrugging the feeling aside, he concentrated briefly and then exploded in a burst of chakra as 7 tails blew forth from his body to assail Hinata's shield on the sides. Hinata, who had focused her energy to protecting against the frontal attacks, whipped her body around to try and shield her flanks. Yes, I can do this. I can. She realized that the attacks were a faint a moment too late. With a cackle, pop, and a rush of air, Her chakra weave was disintegrated as Naruto's 9 tails suddenly shot in unison towards her center one last time. She yelled as they nailed her sternum, the force sending her backwards. She hit the brakes a tree and slid down, dazed. She felt cold metal touch her neck and smiled resignedly up at Naruto, who had gently placed the kunai at her neck. She was pleased to note that he was breathing extremely heavily. Hinata-kun, I haven't fought that hard in weeks. You are amazingly strong. I've never had to use that kind of controlling technique in battle before. Naruto inhaled, then finished. I have to ask, though, who drove you to become so strong? Hearing Naruto ask this, and not wanting to reveal that it was him all along, Hinata blushed profusely. Naruto was puzzled at this reaction and wondered why his heart was slowly breaking. The awkward moment was interrupted by applause. Naruto smiled his typical foxy grin and helped a still blushing Hinata up to greet the cheers of amazing. And that was incredible. Naruto, however, was focused on two faces alone. Sakura was staring at him, tears pouring down her cheeks as she beamed at him. He smiled back at her. Lee, however. Lee was positively trembling. What's the matter, fuzzy brows? Are you scared? Naruto jested. Lee met Naruto's gaze with a look of intense fire. Naruto, I see that the fire of youth burns strongly within you. Take a short break. I will fight you in 1 hour. He finished, thumb pointed up prominently. Naruto grinned. I've been waiting for this for a long time, Lee. Lee nodded. Naruto stood across from Lee in the training ground, having had a quick nap. Thanks to his assimilation of the QB, he was perfectly rested after his nap. Lee began by warning Naruto. Naruto, as you know, my strength comes from my rigorous training and is also its downside. If I ever take more than 1 day's rest, my skills begin to deteriorate. He smiled wildly, which is why that never happens. I still can't use Jinjutsu or even Ninjutsu, but I have finally learned why not. Naruto's eyes widened. I have a Kekai Genkai, Naruto-kun, one just as powerful as your blood limit. You saw my Chunin match 3 years ago, yes? Naruto nodded dumbly. Well, when I used the gates then, it hurt. A lot. As you know, I almost had to give up my life until Hokage-sama. At this point he bowed in her direction. Save my Nindo. He smiled. Naruto, put simply, my bloodline is a bit of a mutation. It allows me, through rigorous training and then a 24-hour period of meditation, to have the gates open and life opened permanently. Lee waited as the implications hit Naruto. He grinned. So your chakra? Lee nodded. Allows me to use this chakra for taijutsu techniques, at the risk of being redundant. He assumed his Gukken stance. Are you ready, Naruto-kun? He shouted. Lee-san, I'm only going to use taijutsu. No fancy tales. But I'm warning ya. My demonic chakra might just beat your gates. Naruto exclaimed, molding his demonic chakra. Red eyes met bushy brows. As one, they disappeared. They met in the center with a resounding explosion, then disappeared. This is going to be good, Shikamaru whispered. Hinata and Sakura slowly walked back to the training ground. They had went into town to grab a bite to eat because, frankly, they were starving. The others had followed suit, but they had all ended up at different restaurants. Now, they trickled back to the training ground, sometimes having to duck as green-black blurs whizzed over their heads, accompanied by a sonic boom or two. Naruto-kun and Lee are amazing, Hinata exclaimed as they crashed through the trees above their heads yet again. I see now why Nejinezen was so adamant about me not fighting Lee. I'm good at taijutsu, and my techniques are as good as Niji's, but they're so fast. Sakura could only nod dumbly as Hinata waxed eloquent about Naruto's ability. She half listened, half wondered just where she stood concerning the blonde's affections. I hope it's not too late, she wondered. I hope I still have a chance. Sakura glanced sideways at Hinata, who had stopped, having reached the training area. Her mouth hung open, and Sakura's did the same when she realized what she was looking at. The training area was more like the surface of the moon, now. Craters pockmarked the area, as if a Western war had taken place there. Shino, Shikamaru, and Ino had also just arrived, displaying similar reactions. Tsunade was the last to return from her lunch break, and was followed by almost every ninja in the village who had seen her in the streets of Konoha and wanted to know just what the hell was going on. She smiled as they laid eyes on the carnage and destruction. One of them spoke up, "But Hokage-sama, who is fighting?" His answer came in the form of an earthquake as Naruto slammed into the ground, presumably having just been caught in Lee's secondary lotus. Lee landed nimbly a few meters away, albeit panting heavily. He assumed the Gukken stance as Naruto climbed out of the hole to stand firm facing Lee. Lee threw back his head and laughed. "Naruto-san, I have never had more fun fighting anyone. Not many can take a lotus and come back for more, but you have taken 4. Gasps accompanied Naruto's response. "Honestly, Lee, the same goes for me. Your endurance is incredible. I was sure I snapped at least all of your bones with that one combo, but you just shrugged it off." He was grinning wildly. Both were panting heavily. "You would too, after a 3-hour spar." Naruto looked up and saw that the clouds were streaked with red and purple. Focusing on Lee, he said, "Lee, normally I'd say let's call it quits, because you shouldn't spar in the dark. Someone could get hurt." Lee nodded, but smiled when he saw Naruto prepare to charge. "But I can't give up now. Let us end this." Naruto blinked away, but this time when they met in the center, they did not instantly warp away at top speed. What proved to be their last skirmish lasted all of 10 seconds, but to Kakashi's new Manjikyu Sharingan, it was as 10 minutes. He watched as Naruto's fist was deflected by Lee's backhand, which became a fist headed for Naruto's chin. He watched as Naruto's head fluidly moved to the side as he placed his hand on the ground to gain leverage for a massive kick. He watched them move like water in a tempest, furious and powerful, yet with a calm deliberateness that chilled his bones. He briefly wondered that Naruto could probably defeat him if he really tried. Kakashi and the rest of the spectators watched as after 10 seconds of blurry action, Lee flew backwards. He stopped his momentum with his feet and then reversed direction as he shot back towards Naruto. Naruto smiled as Lee came on. He remembered Jiraiya's words as he practiced his assassination techniques. "Do not disregard simple moves. They work." As Lee came, he feinted a block, then sidestepped swiftly, brining his arm straight out in Lee's path, charging it with demonic chakra. Lee never saw it coming. Naruto's clothesline combined with his high speed sent him windmilling in midair until his head halted his motion by slamming into the ground. As Lee's body came to rest, Tsunade, Sakura, Hinata, and Mato Guy came out from the crowd. Lee smiled up at his lifelong mentor. "Though I lost, Geizensei, how was I?" Guy smiled. "You were marvelous, Lee. Once again, I am amazed at the fire of youth that burns within you." Naruto watched amused as Lee nodded, satisfied, and promptly lost consciousness. Naruto laughed. "Something's never changed." "Speaking of change," Tsunade approached him. "That was amazing, brat. Let Sakura heal your wounds, then get your butt back to my office. We have a few things to discuss." Naruto nodded, allowing Sakura's green healing chakra to take care of the many wounds he had received from Lee. "Hey, Hinata." Hinata looked up at Naruto, who now had acquired a puzzled look. It was quickly replaced by one of contentedness. "Hinata, would you come with me to Obaken's office? I want to talk to you about some things." Naruto trailed off. Hinata nodded, smiling. "Of course, Naruto-kun. You were amazing, by the way." Naruto matched her grin. "Thanks, Hinata-kun. And thank you, Sakura-kun, for healing me. I feel great. Did Obaken teach you this?" Sakura grinned. "Naruto, you are the only one I know who gets away with calling Tsunade that." "Yes, I was Tsunade-sama's apprentice for the past few years. I learned a bit more than just medicine, though." She flexed a muscle experimentally, then slammed a fist into the tree next to them, obliterating it. Naruto paled. Note to self, don't piss off Sakura-kun ever again. "Well, I'd best be going. Bye, Sakura-kun," Naruto exclaimed nervously, pulling Hinata with him edgily. Sakura smiled sadly and turned around to go home. As she walked, her sad smile became a look of pure determination. "No, I won't lose you, Naruto. Not like I lost Sasuke. Not again." Hinata looked down as she walked beside Naruto, who had yet to talk about anything at all. "Tell him, you baka. You've got to tell him now, or else he'll forget." But as she steeled herself, Naruto suddenly asked, "Hinata-kun, I don't mean to pry. I really don't. How are things going with the Hyuga? Hinata almost collapsed. So that was what Naruto was concerned about. She remembered what Niji had told her from the third Chunin exam. And he said, if you think it's so pointless, don't do anything. When I become Hokage, I'll change the Hyuga for you. Niji finished, eyes staring at a bird which flew lazily about overhead. Hinata smiled. You really changed Niji, Naruto-kun. After his defeat, my father went to him. My father told Niji the secret of his father's death, and it changed both of them. From that day forward, my father became much more pleasant and happy. I hadn't seen him smile since my mother's death so long ago, but now he smiles all the time. And I have you to thank, Naruto-kun, Hinata finished. Father even changed the seal on the branch family. It only seals away the Byakugan. It can't be used to hurt them anymore. Naruto was smiling widely at this point. Arigato, Hinata-kun, I'm just glad I could help. He paused. You said your mother died. What happened? If you don't. Hinata smiled. No, I don't mind Naruto-kun. After all, you shared a great secret with me. The least I can do is tell you about my mother. Naruto smiled. She was a beautiful woman with long, blue hair and shining eyes filled with kindness. She was not a ninja, but she was one of the best doctors the hospital had. Everyone loved her, especially my father. They met after my father was injured on a particularly dangerous mission. My mother was tending his wounds, and when he woke up, he said he thought an angel was tending his wounds. Hinata giggled. My father told me that when he told my mother that later, she blushed so hard, she almost fainted. I guess that's where I get it from. Hinata finished thoughtfully. Naruto's eyes widened. He had never heard Hinata admit her shyness before. Maybe it wasn't a problem anymore. Hinata continued, eyes moist. My mother and father married soon after. They were extremely happy, but after Hanabanichan's birth, she became very ill. It turned out that she picked up a disease from one of the hospital patients, who had died a few days earlier. There was nothing the doctors could do, and my mother. Hinata never finished. She burst into tears and buried her face in her hands, sobbing. She felt her legs give away and remained upright. Hinata became aware of two very strong and firm arms encircling her, keeping her upright, lending her strength. She opened her eyes slightly to see soft black cloth. She looked up and met blue eyes which shined with compassion and tears of their own. It hurts, doesn't it? Naruto whispered. The pain of loneliness hurts so much. He wiped away his tears, then brought a hand down to cup her cheek. But I'm here for you, Hinata-kun, he said as he wiped away her tears with his thumb. You can always count on me. I won't abandon you. I promise. I promise by my Nindo. Hinata giggled. He was so Naruto. And your Nindo is to never go back on your word, nay? That's my Nindo too. Naruto's eyes widened. It is. Hinata nodded, smiling. Arigato, Naruto-kun. I feel better than ever before, as if a great weight had been lifted off my chest. She pulled away reluctantly. I know Tsunade wants to see you and give you a mission, but tomorrow, will you meet me at Ichiraka's at 3? There's something I want to talk to you about. Naruto smiled. Of course, Hinata-kun. See you tomorrow. He watched as she leapt away. He began to run towards the Hokage's office, blushing. Man, I suck. That was so lame. I hope Hinata-kun doesn't think I'm a loser or anything. He realized that his legs had taken him to Tsunade's office. He began to knock, reconsidered, and simply opened the door as if he owned the place. Tsunade smiled. Get to bed, brat. I want you two at the Forest of Death training ground at 8 o'clock sharp. Naruto gulped. What for? Tsunade smiled evilly. Survival test. Surviving what? Naruto wondered how such a kind woman could look so evil. He realized why with her next words. Surviving me. Naruto paled. I'd get some rest if I were you, brat. You'll need it. As Naruto headed out stiffly, she couldn't resist calling out. Oh, and don't eat any breakfast unless you want to puke all day. You can make up for it later when you meet Hinata-kun at Ichiraka's. She laughed as she heard Naruto fall down the stairs in shock, cursing. She leaned back in her chair, sake in hand. I can't wait for 8 tomorrow. Chapter 9, Attack of the Hormones. Whoosh. 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 Naruto flew from tree to tree calmly, trying to quiet the inner storm raging within him. I need to focus. Damn it. He thought angrily. Women and their wiles. I give up trying to understand them. He stopped his hopping and decided to confront the issue then and there, instead of trying to fight it off. He arrived at the entrance to the forest of death to find Tsunade waiting for him. She tossed him a survival pack. Here, she said, throwing the backpack to him. This is a very important test for you, Naruto. Pay attention. Naruto grinned as he threw a snappy salute, then waved. He shouldered the bag as Tsunade began to explain his little survival test. You will survive in the forest alone for 3 days and 3 nights. If you survive, report back to this entrance. A 3-ninja team consisting of Sakura, Hinata, and Lee will be waiting for you. You will then lead this team into the forest and survive for 1 more day and night. On the 5th day, I will enter the forest and hunt you down. If you survive, whether through confrontation or hiding. Tsunade grinned. You will be promoted to Jounin. Naruto's jaw dropped. He asked, but isn't there some sort of exam for becoming a Jounin, just like the Chunin exams? Tsunade waggled her finger. Naruto, I'm surprised that perverted sensei of yours didn't teach you this. The Chunin exams are so public because Chunin perform more missions and of a greater variety than any other rank of ninja. Jounin, on the other hand, are a hidden village's pride. We can't make their skills public, so the Kage of a village will set their own exam for Jounin. For example, all of your friends except Lee, Hinata, and Sakura are all Jounin now. I held them back so that they could take this exam with you. Naruto sat back on his heels, pensive. He snapped his fingers and said, if that's the case, why are you administering the exam? Couldn't you get Niji or Kakashi or some other Jounin to do it? Tsunade smiled. Of course, this test also has another purpose, one more important than the Jounin aspect. Once again, you'll find out, if you survive. She stepped aside and motioned Naruto into the forest. Curious, he began to walk in but was stopped by Sakura. When did she get here? He had wondered. She had smiled at him, then hugged him firmly. You better come out of this alive, Naruto, she had said. Don't worry about it, Sakura-kun, he exclaimed. Besides, after 3 days, I'll have you to look after me. She punched his arm. Baka, now get going, she said, smiling. Naruto had leapt into the forest without further delay. Now, he had realized that in a few minutes he would arrive once again at the entrance to the Forest of Death to rendezvous with his team. He had realized that that team would include Sakura and Hinata. I wonder how their teamwork is. He mused aloud. Here I am, in the middle of the forest, about to be given a team of Jounin-level ninja, and I don't have any idea how well we all work together. He entertained the idea of staging a bell test in the middle of the forest, then laughed out loud at the idea of 3 academy graduates attempting to take 2 bells from him while surviving the forest. Hey, that's not a bad idea, he shouted. Hey, Kyubi chuckled. More like me every day. Naruto ignored the demon lord's comment and finished his trek to his entrance gate. There waiting for him were Sakura, Hinata, and Lee. He landed in front of them and wordlessly motioned for them to follow. He watched relieved as they fell into a diamond formation with him as he leapt away. He led them back to the cave he had made in the base of a tree's roots. They filed in, and Naruto sat down, back against the trunk of the massive tree. Welcome to my humble abode. Come on in, pull up a chair, Naruto said sarcastically. Lee laughed, while Sakura glared at the blonde troublemaker. Naruto, please. We have to get through the day and night together alive. So let's try and be a little more civil, eh? Hinata stared at Sakura. How dare she? He was just making a joke. She fumed silently. Naruto laughed. Stuff it, Sakura-kun. Sit down. I want to discuss how we're going to take down Tsunade. Hinata and Sakura gasped, but Lee laughed yet again. On Naruto, only you would have the sheer guts to say that about our esteemed Hokage. Naruto laughed as well. I've fought her, won this necklace from her. He pulled out the glittering jade pendant, and also gotten 2 butt-huppins in the process. Now I'm ready to return the favor, but we won't be able to do that without teamwork. Sakura stared at her old teammate. This is Naruto, but he's so smart, and mature, and hot. She shook off her last thought and refocused. That's a good idea, Naruto, Hinata chimed in, but what should we do? Naruto grinned. We're going to force her into a battle in an area I scouted out on my second day here. It's about half a kilometer from this cave. You guys want to hear my plan?" They nodded, so he continued. "Lee, you will be waiting at the camp when Tsunade finds it. If you remember, I didn't have any of you cover our trail as we went to my cave. Bachan will find it, and when she does, Lee, you will engage her briefly. She's our Hokage for a reason, Lee," Naruto warned. "So don't try anything major, or she'll wipe you out. I don't think even I could take her on. Lee went pale, but Naruto reassured him. "Your only task at that point is to lead her to site that we'll go to together today. Once you do, you'll engage her in battle. At that point, Hinatakin will join you. She has some interesting mid-range techniques and will complement your fighting style well." Hinata beamed as Naruto smiled at her. "Sakurakin and I will be in the trees surrounding the battlefield. When you all feel my chakra flare, jump away from Tsunade. Sakura will then begin throwing as many explosive tagged kunai as she can in a random pattern. I'll use a technique of mine that prevents damage, sort of like chakra armor, and attack. When Sakura runs out, Lee come back into the fight and engage Bachan with me. Lee, I'm going to teach you a really awesome taijutsu technique that only we can use together." Lee flashed a shiny grin. "Excellent, Naruto-kun." Naruto grinned, and Hinata swore she saw a glint of red. At this point, "Hinata, you make as many water clones as you can while keeping enough chakra in reserve to join the fight with them. Sakura will be waiting in the trees when Hinata comes in. Sakura, I need you to ambush the old hag when she tries to escape." Naruto sat back and waited for the others to add better stuff to the plan, but Hinata simply said, "Naruto-kun, that plan is amazing." Naruto blushed. "Really? I didn't think it was all that great." "Nonsense," shouted Lee. "Truly Naruto has become strong." Sakura could only smile helplessly. Naruto spent the rest of the day showing them where the battle would take place, a circular clearing with trees enclosing the area. After that, they broke down the camp, making it look like someone had just left. They then settled down to sleep and to wait. Tsunade leapt from tree to tree, headed for the smoke that presumably wafted upwards from a campfire. She felt a twinge of excitement run through her. "I haven't been this excited about a fight since Naruto got me to beat up Orochimaru team," she thought amusedly. She landed in the middle of the camp. She ducked just in time as Lee flew over her head in a flying kick. He skidded to a stop in front of the Gondame, grinning. "I have heard all the stories of your legendary strength, Hokage-sama." Lee's grin became a smirk. "I believe none of them." Tsunade's amused expression vanished in a millisecond. She growled and dashed for Lee, who settled into the Gukken stance. Her first punch slammed into Lee's guard with a sickening crunch, causing Lee to wince and back off. "Kamisama, the woman hits hard." No wonder Naruto-kun was adamant about not confronting her alone. Lee began to dodge the legendary sucker's blows. Then, after causing her to jump away with a quick flurry of kicks, he leapt into the trees. He watched relieved as Tsunade followed him up to continue the skirmish. That was the trickiest part of their mission, Naruto had warned, getting Tsunade to follow Lee. Lee jumped down to the clearing, alarmed that Tsunade had forced him back that far already. He landed gracefully and assumed the Gukken stance as Tsunade charged in, right hand trailing behind her. She never saw Hinata drop from the branches above. With one swipe of her chakra beams, she knocked Tsunade's chakra-charged hand out of its path towards Lee, who smiled as he spun, delivering a vicious kick to the esteemed Hokage's head. She took it without flinching, turning the blow into an opportunity to cartwheel away. She came out of the flip spinning and molded chakra to her feet. She launched herself at Lee and Hinata, who barely escaped the spinning kick Tsunade delivered. Tsunade spun on her toe and dropped her heel onto Hinata's arm. Hinata yelped as she was nicked by the blow, slightly fracturing the arm. As the fight continued, Sakura watched in alarm as Hinata began to falter and nudged Naruto. But he was already standing, flaring his chakra to its fullest extent. Without even looking, Hinata jumped out of the clearing and headed for Sakura to be healed, while Lee simply vanished in a burst of speed. Tsunade had 2 seconds before the first explosion went off. She spent the first realizing what was about to happen, and the second planning what to do about it. Then the exploding paper bombs began to crash around her, and she decided that to hell with planning and to just come out of this alive. What the hell? She thought as she dodged the explosions. I guess they think I'll be okay because I'm the Hokage. Well, explosions hurt, damn it. Her thoughts were cut short as she caught sight of a red blob hurtling towards her. She cursed as she realized Naruto was making his entrance. She should have expected it after that massive chakra flare. She dodged to the side as a chakra claw hurtled past her to crash into a tree, splintering it, but had to immediately return to being directly in front of Naruto due to a well-placed exploding kunai by Sakura. Despite the situation, she felt a twinge of pride. Then she felt a twinge of pain as Naruto appeared behind her, punching her shoulder. She spun away but managed to block the next few blows. Naruto growled as one of her counterattacks collided with his face and began to grow his chakra tails. As if on cue, Lee fell instead of a kunai. Tsunade watched as Lee and Naruto linked arms, then started as Naruto's demonic chakra melded with Lee. On Lee's free hand, a tail engulfed his arm, extending out about 4 feet into a giant blade-like appendage. The same thing happened to Naruto's arm. Demonic Taijutsu, Dance of the Lotus, they yelled in unison. They began to spin around in a circle, simultaneously running towards Tsunade, who could only marvel at the control they needed to perform such a move. And the teamwork. Then she paled as the blades they each wielded began scything towards her. She prepared to block, but almost stumbled when they separated, each one now having 2 chakra blades. As one, they attacked, and Tsunade began to dodge and block the deadly swords. Naruto had hoped they wouldn't need Hinata's water clones at this point, but realized after a few minutes that, despite the power and skill Lee and he were using, it wasn't enough to get past the Hokage's guard. Despite the fact that they had landed numerous blows, Tsunade had not only healed them, but returned almost all of them, and not without repercussions. Naruto smiled as he felt the sudden presence of, "Wow, Hinata, that's a ton of clones," he thought, amazed at Hinata's stamina. Tsunade realized that perhaps it was time to regroup when the clones dropped down and attacked. Though significantly weaker than shadow clones, they could still use Jukin, which was a pain in the ass to heal. Tsunade leapt up to a tree and forgot about Sakura, who hurtled out of the foliage to deliver her own ridiculously powerful punch to Tsunade. Tsunade threw up a guard, but smiled helplessly as the force from the blow sent her back down towards the clone army, of which she had only managed to diminish a few. The clones surrounded her with Lee, and Naruto walked into the circle they formed and smiled at Tsunade. "Well, Bachan, do you surrender? Don't try a replacement jutsu, by the way, unless you want to land in a mass of forest leeches. I got rid of all possible replacement objects beforehand and gather up the leeches the night before." Tsunade began to laugh. She couldn't help it. She laughed long and hard, while Naruto stared at her amused. When Tsunade finally calmed down, she realized that Naruto had silently created 3 shadow clones, all of which now held kunai at her throat. Her eyes widened. "Bachan, please surrender," Naruto urged, still smiling. Tsunade helplessly nodded. "Okay, brat. You and your team pass. Now let's get out of here. I never liked this place." Naruto's smile almost blinded them all. "So, Bachan, what's our first mission?" Tsunade glared at the blonde, still a little peeved at how flawless his plan was. "Quiet, brat. I want all of you to head to my office ASAP. Except you, brat. I want a word with you." Naruto nodded, then turned to congratulate his teammates. "You guys were amazing. We did a great job out there. I hope Bachan keeps us together. She wants us all to go to her office now, though, so I'll see you there in a sec." He stopped Hinata. "Sorry we didn't get to go to Ichiraku together, Hinata-kun." She laughed. "It's okay, Naruto-kun. You were a little busy. How about we go after Tsunadesima meets with us?" Sakura, who had been listened, piped in. "Yeah, why don't the 3 of us go? Lee's got to meet Guy somewhere, so why not all 3 of us?" Naruto paled as Hinata glared at Sakura with more killer intent than he thought was possible from the pearlied girl. I gotta talk to Tsunade. We'll talk about it later. Run along now, bye-bye." Naruto panicked as he ushered the 2 new Kunoichi Jounin away, still giving each other death glares. He turned away and ran back to Tsunade, who looked on smirking. "Well, Hormone Boy, now that that's over with, I have confidential news for you." Naruto stopped all motion. Tsunade nodded in approval and went on. That test was, as I said, more than just a jounin exam. It was a test to see if you were ready to kill, and you passed. She breathed in. I have your team's first mission for you, but I have no doubt that you will be the deciding factor in this assignment. Sasuke has been spotted entering the Fire Country. Your mission is to find him before he reaches Konoha and bring me his body, dead or alive. I only say alive because if it's possible, I want to examine the cursed seal and then hand him over to Marino Ibiki for interrogation. Naruto was staring at the ground when Tsunade finished, but when he looked up, his eyes gleamed with anticipation. Well, he said, let's head back to my future office, nay? We gotta break the news. Chapter 10, Remember the Past. Naruto walked along the main street of Konoha, completely and utterly bewildered and with no idea of where he was going. After he and Tsunade had briefed Hinata and Sakura, and after a few more not-so-discreet glares from the kunoichi, Tsunade had whipped out from seemingly nowhere Naruto's ornate box. He had yelped, having completely forgotten it in the chaos that had followed. Tsunade then handed him a set of keys on a single ring. Naruto had stared at the keys, dumbfounded. You got keys made for my apartment? Thanks, Bachan. Tsunade glared. No, Naruto, these are the keys to your new house, left to you by the Hokage. Naruto frowned. But Bachan, why? And which ho? Tsunade had lost her temper at this point and thrown Naruto from her open office window. When he landed, a crumpled piece of paper hit him on the head. Upon opening it, he saw that it was directions to his house. And now, he was on the last leg of the journey. He began to feel uneasy and downright terrified. His path was taking him past the Hyuga clan house, along with every other wealthy and influential Konoha citizen, some of whom were council members, all of whom had treated him like trash in the beginning. Naruto shook his head clear of those thoughts. If any of them try anything now, I'm more than ready for them. Naruto looked back down to his paper, then realized that he had arrived. He looked at the house, then back at the address on the paper, then back at the house. That's no house, Naruto mumbled. That's a mansion. Indeed, Naruto now stood in front of what seemed to be the largest building intended for living in Konoha. The house stood 3 stories high, with a bright red-shingled roof and tall windows. Naruto mumbled to himself as he walked up to the front door. Why was everything in life an adventure for him? Why did it always have to be flying from one fight to the next? When Naruto reached the door, he began to try the keys in the lock unsuccessfully until finally one of them turned the tumblers and opened the door. He walked inside and was greeted first by boxes of his possessions, spare clothes, spare weapons, and a few others which he was pretty sure contained the necessities of life. He then looked up from the pile of crates to notice that the house was immaculately clean. Bachan probably paid a maid to do it or something, Naruto thought tiredly. He walked to the stairs and found the master bedroom, curiously placed on the second floor directly in the middle of the house. He sat down heavily and placed the box on his lap. He picked out the smallest key from the ring, and surprisingly it fit into the box's keyhole. He turned the lock and opened the lid. Sitting on top of a pile of unidentifiable stuff was a letter face down. Naruto picked it up and turned it over. It said, "To Uzumaki Naruto, from the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha." And with trembling hands, Naruto opened the letter, pulling out a piece of paper. He opened it up and began to read. Naruto, if you are reading this, then you have reached the age of 16 and are now an adult and jounin of Konoha. I am the Yondaime, but I no longer wish for you to think of me by that title. Call me father. My name is Uzumaki Erashur, Hokage of Konoha, and I am so sorry. I write this letter to you, my son, because I know that my time is running out. The demon lord known as the Kyuubi is headed for Konoha, and I know that it is my duty to stop this demon from destroying any more lives. I'm sorry, son. I know this will be a lot to handle for you, having never known your parents all your life. I know that despite how much of a hero you truly are, those who recognize that in you will be few. I'm sorry for thrusting this burden on you, Naruto, but it is the only way. You are the perfect candidate, being of the Uzumaki bloodline, and I am loath to ask another ninja to sacrifice his child, just so that my own would not have to carry a demon lord in their tummy. I will tell you what you are now ready to hear, Naruto. Hopefully by the end of this letter, you will understand. In my wildest dreams, I hope you can think of me as a father in the end. I was the heir of the Uzumaki bloodline, the sole heir. I was an orphan at birth, but even though I was born from the only clan more powerful than the Uchiha and the Hyuga, I was not regarded well in the village. I vowed that I would gain their respect, and that I would become the Hokage of Konoha. I sought training from one of the most powerful ninja in the world, Jiraiya of the legendary Sannin. I know him now as Ero Sennin. If you've ever met him, you do too. Eventually, I gained the respect of the village, and soon the attention of the Sandaime was on me. The old man, well, he's old now, asked me if I would die for my village. I immediately answered yes, because I loved Konoha more than anything else in my life. The old man grinned and said, "Well, my boy, how would you like to be the Hokage?" I laughed, but when I stopped, he was waiting expectantly, as if for an answer. I nodded my head, and from then on, I was the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha. Before I could be anointed, though, we had to fight a war with the Hidden Rock. That war was horrible, lasting several years and costing us many ninja, all of them good men and women. We did win the war, though, and afterwards I became the Hokage when old man Sarutobi retired. After the ceremony and approval of the council, I began my job. Son, if you ever want to be Hokage, be warned. The paperwork sucks. Regardless, I love the job. I loved being connected to every person in the village. I loved defending the village. I met your mother when I was shopping in the village for food. I had left my Hokage robes in my house, so I was dressed no differently from any other civilian, something I enjoyed doing. I was getting some fruit when I bumped into a young woman about my age. I helped her pick up what she was carrying, which turned out to be a basket of ramen noodles. When I met eyes with her, I was dumbstruck. Your mother, Naruto, was possibly the most beautiful woman in the entire village, with long red hair and shining eyes. I immediately inquired where she was going, and she laughed and shoved past me. As she left, she shouted behind her, "Ichiraku's." I followed her, fruit forgotten, to Ichiraku's, a ramen stand. I sat down at the counter and ordered miso. I was served by the red-haired woman herself, who introduced herself as Kimari of the Yamaru clan. Your mother was incredible, fiery and calm, funny yet serious, and stubborn as hell. We got to talking, and I asked her to dinner. 1 year later, we were married. Naruto, if you ever meet someone whom to you is important in the deepest core of your heart, never let them go. You will be happier than you could ever imagine if you follow your heart. Our marriage was the best choice I ever made. If I had to choose between Hokage and father, I would gladly choose father. Now, as I write this and put together this inheritance for you, it is a year after I married Kimari. You were born just yesterday, just before we received word from the grass village that the Kyuubi was coming. Kimari, a powerful kunoichi in her own right, has agreed that this is for the best. When the Kyuubi attacks, I will confront it atop the boss of the toads, Gamabunta. Kimari will be on the ground. I will perform the Shikifuen sealing technique, and then Kimari will use a seal she just invented to force the Kyuubi's spirit into you, Naruto. Kimari will then use another invented technique to take the place of the Kyuubi's soul inside the demon's body, completing the requirements the god of death laid down when the technique was created. Now, there are some interesting things in this box, so be careful. Inside the box you now hold are 3 scrolls, 1 3-pronged kunai, and 2 locks of hair. The hair is from your mother and I, so that you may have proof of my tale. The 3-pronged kunai is an artifact from the war with the rock. It is now obsolete, but I thought you might like to have it. It used to be the essential part of my famous technique, the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God. This technique earned me the nickname, the Yellow Flash. The 3 scrolls each contain my instructions on how to perform my 3 most powerful techniques. I'm sure you will master them in no time. Remember, they are only to be used when defending Konoha. And now, my son, my little Naruto, I must say goodbye. Your mother says, I love you, my son. I know you will be strong. Know that I am watching over you. I love you, Naruto. Be strong for Konoha. Your mother and I are watching out for you. Uzumaki Erasure. Uzumaki Kimari. Naruto stared at the letter, rereading it slowly. Dad, he said aloud. He moved the letter and box aside as tears began to fall. Naruto smiled as he looked at the letter, his only connection to his parents. Thanks, Dad. I understand. And I love you too. He reached over to grab the box when a knock sounded at the door. Wiping tears from his face, he jogged down the stairs and opened the door, yelping. Ah, hi, Hinatakin, what's up? Hinata stood in front of the doorway looking down at her twiddling fingers. Sunadesimo wishes me to tell you that the mission is cancelled and that Sasuke has left the country. We are to have the rest of the week to rest. Good night, Naruto-kun. As she turned to leave, Naruto became aware of a curious clenching in his heart. He tried to breathe, but found he couldn't. He painfully forced down a swallow and said, Hinatakin, do you want to come in? I'd hate to think you came all the way here just for the sake of a few seconds. Hinata froze, then turned around. Naruto's heart skipped as he caught sight of Hinata's smile. It wasn't very wide, but it was so filled with genuine happiness that it blew Naruto away. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I would like that very much. Naruto grinned. Hey, yeah, you can see my dad's box too. The one that Tsunade gave me. I'll meet you in the kitchen. Come on in. Hinata giggled as Naruto raced upstairs like a 6-year-old with his first real kunai. She walked into the kitchen, staring in awe at the sheer quality and craftsmanship of the house. She turned back to the stairs as Naruto came down, bearing the ornate gold box from before. He set it on the table, opening it and handing a letter to Hinata. Here, Hinatakin, I'd like you to read this. Hinata nodded and read the letter. Naruto watched as her pearly eyes widened and then began to moisten as she put down the letter. Naruto-kun, she choked. I'm so sorry. No, Hinatakin, don't be sorry. I'm not. I'm really happy. Now I finally have the last piece of the puzzle of who I am. I know who my parents are now. It's okay, really. Hinata smiled and wiped away her tears. Thank you for sharing that with me, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled. Hey, you spilled your past to me first. I just thought, you know. Hinata giggled. I do know, Naruto. Thank you. I need to get going, though, or Niji will get worried. Are we still on for tomorrow? Naruto gave the thumbs up. Of course, Hinatakin. I can't wait. I just hope I don't make an ass of myself. Wait, why would that matter? It's just Hinatakin, right? Hinata smiled, then turned to leave. Oh, Naruto. Here. Naruto frowned as she handed him an envelope, also addressed to him from his father. This was in the other envelope. Good night, Naruto-kun. Good night, Hinatakin, he shouted as she disappeared into the night. Naruto turned his attention to this new letter and hastily opened it, wondering what it could possibly contain. He began to read as he ascended to his new bedroom. As he read, his cerulean orbs widened until he staggered onto the bed and sat down heavily. He looked out the window. Sasuke, what you seek, what you did, it was all for nothing. Chapter 11: Attack of the Hormones. Naruto stared at the piece of paper he had just read, heart pounding from the shock of discovery, the kind of shock that only comes when a major outtake on life has just been shattered. Naruto stared at the paper, willing it to be wrong. What follows is a report filed by Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage of Konoha, and Uchiha Itachi, captain of Umbu, concerning the massacre of 2 major clan houses of Konoha, the Uzumaki and the Uchiha clans. This report's goal is not to republish the details of the death of the Uzumaki clan, as they were all murdered by the Kyuubi, down to the last child. That report can be found under its own title in the archives. However, it is important to keep the fact that the Uzumakis were murdered in mind as one reads this report. Konoha has always had 3 noble clans: Hyuga, Uchiha, and Uzumaki. Of the 3, the Uzumaki were clearly the most powerful based on comparative strength of ninja and Kekkei Genkai. When the Kyuubi attacked, the commander in charge of our forces while the Yondaime was preparing his seal, a Hyuga, placed the Uzumaki ninja on the front line, stating that they, as the most powerful ninja in Konoha, had the best chance of stopping the Kyuubi. The Uzumakis suspected no treachery and agreed to the assessment. They were slaughtered by the Kyuubi, just as the nameless Hyuga expected. However, several of the wounded Uzumaki escaped the battlefield. The Hyuga commander, with 2 of his associates, tracked them down and killed them. This information was released by Uchiha Itachi, who witnessed his best friend partake in the event. His news was most troubling. as he stated that with his Sharingan, he spotted two familiar chakra signatures, the most important being his friends, a fellow Uchiha. This led Itachi to believe that there was an understanding between the Uchiha and the Hyuga concerning the Uzumaki, despite the long-term hostility between the Uchiha and the Hyuga. It was also rumored that the alliance would continue due to the uncertainty of the extinction of the entire Uzumaki clan. A few years after the death of the Yondaime, Itachi went to his father, the head of the Uchiha clan, and demanded to be let in on the conspiracy. His father, suspecting that Itachi wanted to help, gladly acquiesced. Itachi then went to the Sandaime Hokage, now acting Hokage, with what he had learned. The Sandaime ordered the immediate assassinations of those who murdered the Uzumakis, and it was carried out by Itachi himself. The Sandaime then asked Itachi how deep the conspiracy ran in the Uchiha clan. Itachi reported that the only one who remained innocent was his younger brother, Uchiha Sasuke. The Sandaime then ordered the immediate arrest of the entire Uchiha clan ninja. Itachi asked that he be the one to preempt the Umbu to the mission, and the Sandaime agreed. When Itachi arrived, he was attacked by friends of the Uchiha. He had already killed his best friend and fellow Umbu member. Itachi defended against their attacks, killing them. This gathered the attention of the rest of the clan, who all attacked Itachi. He tried to dissuade them, not wanting to spill any more Uchiha blood, but was unsuccessful. He neutralized every last Uchiha. Missing among the dead were Itachi's own parents, among others. He was stopped, however, by Hyuga Kasari, who had been stationed at the Uchiha house just in case the Hokage tried anything. He seized the opportunity to ambush Itachi, incapacitating him. Itachi reports that Kasari then transformed into Itachi and proceeded to massacre all remaining Uchiha, including the inactive ninja and those who never became ninja. The Hyuga had planned this the entire time and had acted on the opportunity Itachi's attempted arrest presented them. They double-crossed the Uchiha, slaying them all. Itachi reports that as soon as he was able, he sought out his parents, only to find them dead from ninjato wounds. He immediately ran outside to see his brother confronting the transformed Hyuga. Not wanting to bring further pain and confusion on his brother, Itachi abandoned the mission and returned to the Sandaime. The Sandaime was forced by Itachi to label him as a missing nin, whereupon Itachi left Konoha and has not returned to this day. This information is not to be released until Uchiha Sasuke's coming of age, and should be shown to him before any other. Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage. Uchiha Itachi. Naruto fought down the urge to hunt down Sasuke and beat the sense into him, resolving instead to finally catch up on his sleep. But damn it, he yelled as he lay awake. It's just too damn confusing. Plagued by uncertainty, Naruto succumbed to unconsciousness. Hinata and Sakura stood outside Ichiraka's ramen stand, waiting for Naruto to show up. He wasn't late, not at all. Rather, the two kunoichi had tried to beat the other there, only to arrive at the same time. Hinata stared at Sakura and decided the issue had to be resolved before Naruto-kun came. Sakura-san, why are you so interested in Naruto-kun all of a sudden? Hinata blurted out. From what I saw a few years ago, you didn't really think much of him. Sakura sighed. You know, Hinata, you're right. I thought he was an idiot and a loser. I had no idea he had ever suffered so much. I didn't know anything about him at all. Sakura caught Hinata's frown. And yes, I know I never gave him or myself a chance otherwise, really. But that's why I'm here, because I do know Naruto, having been on his team, and I know he's more forgiving, caring, generous, and kind-hearted than anyone I know. I've already begged for a second chance for myself, but I still need to give him his first. Hinata sighed. So there's nothing I can say that will make you stop chasing him? Sakura laughed. Come on, Hinata, I can't just let him go without a fight. Besides, she said wistfully, he is so hot now that he's grown up a bit. Hinata giggled despite herself and gave in, laughing helplessly. Fine then, Sakura, but know this, my Nindo, I never give up, and I never take back my word. And I will get Naruto-kun. I've watched yet done nothing for too long. Now, Hinata finished, staring down. When she looked up, her eyes were shining with determination. I know more about Naruto-kun than anyone. I won't lose. Sakura glared at Hinata, then laughed. Oh well, I'd hate to lose a friend over a guy. Still friends? Hinata nodded and took Sakura's proffered hand. In other worlds, it was rumored that having a good firm handshake was a sign of one's confidence and strength. Men would often take this idea to the extreme, turning handshakes into hand-crushing contests, neither one willing to let go. When Naruto arrived at Ichiraku's, still mildly shocked over the revelations he experienced the previous night, he was greeted to the strangest sight. Hinata and Sakura were locked in a titanic struggle which had escalated into a mildly hazardous situation. Sakura seemed to be using her inhuman strength, while Naruto swore he sensed Hinata pushing chakra into Sakura's hands. Sweat dripped down their faces as they tried to crush, no, obliterate the other's hand. I can come back later if you want, Naruto offered tentatively. However, as each girl realized Naruto had arrived, they leapt apart, smiling widely at the blonde shinobi. "Good morning, Naruto-kun," they said in unison. They glared at each other for a moment. Then Sakura reached out and grabbed Naruto's hand and pulled him into the ramen stand, followed closely by a steaming Hinata. Naruto, oblivious, happily seated himself at the counter and yelled out, "Hey old man, gimme 30 bowls of miso ramen." The grizzled ramen chef laughed. "Coming right up, Arishiza." He stopped in mid-sentence, then bowed his head. His daughter, patted him on the shoulder. "I know," she mumbled. "It sounded like him too. I don't think anyone heard, so I don't think the Hokage has to know about it this time." Naruto laughed helplessly. "It's all right, old man. She essentially told me everything." Naruto grinned. "I'm still waiting for my ramen. I want 30 bowls of miso." The chef turned around and grinned. "You got it, brat. And what would the missus like?" Hinata laughed. "I'll have what Naruto-kun's having." Sakura smiled. "Ditto." The chef laughed. "Oh, Naruto, you're growing up fast. One woman ain't enough for you, is it?" Naruto blushed fervently. "No, we're just having lunch, that's all. Just make the ramen." The chef laughed at Naruto's protests. Then Sakura remembered something. "Naruto, why did he think you were the yondaime?" Naruto grinned. "Because I'm his son, of course." Sakura sat back, shocked. "You found out who your parents were? And your father was a Hokage?" Naruto simply smiled as the ramen was served. Before breaking apart his chopsticks, he reached into a pocket and handed Sakura a letter. "Read it for yourself. Meanwhile, will eat. Itadakimatsu." He began to shovel ramen in, motioning for Hinata to do the same. She did, albeit with a little more dignity. Sakura's ramen remained untouched as she read the letter. She finished and looked up, eyes misty. "Hinata, have you seen this?" She nodded, slurping up her noodles. Naruto cleared his throat. "Actually, there's another letter neither of you have seen. I think you'll find it interesting indeed." He pulled the mission report out of his pocket and handed it to Hinata, who motioned Sakura over. Together they read the truth about the Uchiha massacre and why there were no Uzumakis in Konoha. "Naruto, this is huge," Sakura exclaimed, settling onto her stool. "Does Tsunadesima know about this?" Naruto shook his head. "I was going to tell her after lunch today. The only question remains is what is she going to have us do about it?" Hinata glared. "I don't see why that should change. Sasuke attacked and attempted to kill a fellow Konoha shinobi. He betrayed us all. The only reason Hokagesima hasn't sent an army after him is because he was just a genin when he left and didn't know anything important about Konoha." Naruto shook his head. "It's not that simple, Hinatakin. This information completely destroys the only motive Sasuke had for doing everything he's done so far, for good or ill. I'm just wondering how the Bachan will interpret it." Naruto returned his attention to his noodles, signaling the old man for more. He glanced over at Sakura. "Hey Sakura, you've got noodles on your head." Sakura immediately moved her hand to the accused area. "What? Where?" Naruto seized the opportunity to flick a few noodles onto her hand as it searched, and they landed with a satisfying splat. "Naruto!" Sakura yelled, flinging the noodles back at a laughing Naruto. They spent the rest of the lunch chatting about Konoha, with every other question from Hinata and Sakura being about details of Naruto's training with Jiraiya. Finally, even Naruto was stuffed, so he opened up his little frog wallet, counted out the yen, and placed it on the counter. "Nay, see you in a few hours, old man." Naruto called back as he walked away, flanked by the two kunoichi. Naruto led them directly to the Hokage's tower. You guys can wait out here if you want. I'm just gonna deliver the letter to Bachan. Be right back. And with that he dashed up the stairs, leaving behind a sputtering Hinata and a fuming Sakura. Naruto knocked on the door to the Hokage's office, eliciting a come in. Naruto walked in. That's funny, Bachan. I didn't think you'd be awake. Isn't this paperwork time? He ducked under a heavy medical textbook and continued, ignoring the slam of the many pounds of paper hitting the wall. I've got something you need to look at immediately, Naruto said seriously, placing the letter on the desk. Tsunade looked at Naruto curiously, opening the letter. She read it carefully, then handed it back to Naruto. Well, this certainly changes a few things. I guess the real question is, how does it change for you? Naruto frowned. This whole conspiracy reeks of the Hyuga, excluding Hinataken and Niji. If the Hyuga orchestrated the whole thing, then not only is Itachi completely innocent, but Sasuke had been on a wild goose chase for almost his entire life. Tsunade nodded. I'm glad to see you're not letting your emotions cloud your judgment of the situation. Now, I know what I'm going to do about it, but I'd like to hear your opinion. Naruto looked up thoughtfully. Well, I'd like to have 3 things accomplished, if it were up to me. First, I'd ascertain just how much of Sasuke's actions were caused by corruption from the cursed seal. Second, I'd confront both Itachi and Sasuke in an attempt to bring both of them back to Konoha because, from what I've seen, we still need strong ninjas, especially with the threats from Akatsuki and Orochimaru. Tsunade smiled. You sure have grown, brah. Naruto grinned. And finally, I'd like to find out what my Kekai Genkai is. Tsunade's praise died in her throat. Well, except for that last one, I agree with you. Naruto, as the foremost medical expert in the world, your Kekai Genkai may never manifest itself because of the interference caused by the Kyuubi as you grew up. I confer with him and get his opinion on this. Naruto frowned, but perked up when Tsunade said, however, I've decided to give you its class mission. Your objective is to travel to the unofficial Sound Country. From there, locate Orochimaru and Sasuke. Avoid confrontation if at all possible, but you have official permission to fight and kill anyone you meet, including Orochimaru and Sasuke. However, Naruto stood at attention. Your number 1 priority on this mission is to isolate Sasuke and explain everything to him. Do it any way possible, and then come home with the results. Are we clear? Naruto nodded, grinning. Woohoo! My first class mission. Tsunade smiled despite the gravity of the situation. You leave in 1 week. This time is to be spent with your team perfecting your teamwork, as well as to relax. Return to my office 1 week from now. Dismissed. Tsunade waved her hand, returning to her paperwork. Naruto nodded once, then performed a quick seal and poofed away. Hinata and Sakura had spent the time Naruto was talking with Tsunade by glaring at each other and thinking up ways to get Naruto alone with themselves. Naruto chose to poof right between them. What the Sakura exclaimed. Naruto, please don't do that. Naruto grinned sheepishly. Sorry, Sakura-kun, but we got a mission. Hinata smiled. Great. What is it, and when do we leave? A search and retrieval mission beginning 1 week from now. Naruto explained. We'll be headed for Sound Country, but we have the week to work on teamwork and… Naruto trailed off, then jumped. My new techniques. I have learned my new techniques. And you all have to too. We'll be so powerful, Naruto exclaimed, punching the air in front of him. Hinata laughed. Hey Naruto, would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Just the 2 of us? She blurted out, shocked at her own boldness, though her confidence was precisely what she had worked on for 3 years. Sakura's mouth dropped open, but she recovered magnificently, plan already forming. Sure, Hinataken. I'd love to. I mean, that'd be awesome. Naruto trailed off, blushing. Sakura chose this opportunity. Well, Naruto, will you have dinner with me 2 nights from now? Alone? She asked innocently, shooting a victory sign at Hinata. Sure, Sakura-kun. I should go now? I'm gonna check out those new techniques. Bye, Sakura-kun. See you at 5 tomorrow, Hinataken. And he poofed away. Hinata glared at Sakura, who returned the favor. I won't lose. Chapter 12, I'm not Sasuke. A poof of smoke echoed throughout the Uzumaki household. Naruto panted as he leaned against the door for support. As an afterthought, he locked it, though he knew any ninja worth keeping out wouldn't even break his step as he walked through the door. Naruto grinned. Then again, most of the arrogant ninja in this village would think that in one would expect someone to come through a window. Why bother with the door? Naruto sighed. He was mentally avoiding the confrontation he knew was building within himself. Two confrontations, actually. Naruto groaned. Shut up, Bakakitsune. Not now. The demon lord remained silent, but Naruto was past caring. He was already thinking about Sasuke team. I don't get it. Naruto howled as he resisted the urge to punch something. He growled as he thought, this was a clan house. There's got to be something I can beat up. A few minutes later, he was standing in a training room on the first floor, surrounded by wooden posts and dummies. Naruto selected a particularly tough-looking log and began to rip it a new one. Literally. What the hell happened to my murderous rage? Naruto wondered aloud as he pounded the post with heavy, deliberate jabs. Sasuke betrayed me. Wham! Sasuke betrayed the whole village of Konoha, the one I have sworn to protect. He betrayed Sakura, and he betrayed everyone. Wham wham thwack. So I still have to kill him, right? Boom. The log exploded, peppering Naruto with splinters. He watched amusedly as they were pushed out of his body by his healing chakra. Right? He questioned the empty air. Then the truth of the matter hit him like a ton of bricks. No, Naruto affirmed aloud. I don't have to kill him. That's his choice. If he ends up dead by my hand, so be it, but I will not hunt him down. Naruto smiled grimly. I am not Sasuke. Naruto sat down on the floor, not because he was tired, but because he needed to think, and standing was not conducive to thinking. I mean, no one really deserves death. What right do I have to take someone's life? That's not my job. We have a god for that sort of thing. But I do have to find Sasuke. Despite everything he's done, he deserves to know. After all, the letter was intended for him, though I can't imagine why he wasn't told the truth in the first place. Would have saved me a lot of trouble, that's for sure. Naruto finished, rubbing his left shoulder absent-mindedly. Then he stood up and selected another unfortunate log. As he prepared to kill it, the fight suddenly left him, and he slumped onto a nearby bench. His head in his hands, he let loose a groan. Why me? He yelled helplessly. This has to be the most ironic thing that's ever happened to me. Not only have I finally earned Sakurakin's approval, but now I find out that Hinatakin likes me. What the hell? He shouted. Then it hit him. It was not late at all. He could make it. Besides, it would give him an opportunity to do a little investigating into the cross-clan conspiracy. Yeah, it could work. It had to work. Niji, Naruto shouted. Knock 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 knock. Slam. Shit, Naruto mumbled. He ran through 7 hand seals in a blur, ending with snake. As he did so, he faded from existence. Thank you, Erosenin, for teaching me your cloaking techniques. Naruto thought triumphantly. He ran downstairs, not making a sound, and was greeted to a strange sight. His door, knocked in, but still on its hinges. Puzzled, Naruto turned around, only to trip over something hard and firm. Shit, he chorused mentally as he descended. Only 3 people could have spotted me. I hope it's not. But when he saw who had invaded his house, he wished with all his might that it was Sasuke who was standing over him, palm pointed at his heart. Yeah. How you doing, Niji? Niji glared. Sasuke glared at Orochimaru. Why the hell did you pull me out of the fire country? It was not a statement Orochimaru liked. He glared and leaned towards the boy, who did not back away. This was not for you to know, but I think I will tell you, though not because you asked. Orochimaru sat back on his throne-like chair. Of all the things he missed from his old destroyed hideout, he missed his chair the most. So he had one made. He settled into it more comfortably. Konoha will be sending a team of jounin here to investigate. I wanted you here because Naruto-kun will undoubtedly be a part of that team. You are to kill him and activate the Manjikyu Sharingan. Or Sakura, if she is present. I imagine she would make an easier target. Sasuke nodded. She always was the weakest of the 3. He was about to apologize for interrupting Orochimaru in his latest experiment, an action guaranteed to get the snake Sannin to teach him a new jutsu, when a scuffle broke out in the hallway. Sasuke started to leave to investigate, but was stopped by Orochimaru, who had suddenly appeared at the Uchiha's side. "No, I will see to this myself." Orochimaru shut the door behind him and turned to face an interesting scene. Kabuto stood over the bodies of two snakes, which were in the process of poofing out of existence. He whipped around and bowed to Orochimaru. "My apologies, Orochimaru-sama. The captured summons got a little unruly. I had to kill them." Orochimaru shrugged indifferently. "It matters not," he purred. "That experiment was a failure. How is Plan B faring?" Kabuto smiled. "Well, Orochimaru-sama, do you think we'll need it?" Orochimaru shook his head. "No, but it never hurt to have one, did it?" Kabuto laughed. Itachi stood before his mysterious commander, patiently awaiting his next command, even though they both knew what it would be. "Itachi, take your partner Kisame into Fire Country. Uzumaki Naruto will be traveling with a team of Jounin headed to Sound Country, presumably to attack Orochimaru. Give them this." Itachi caught the ring that was tossed at him. His eyes betrayed no emotion, though he said, "It is time?" The man cloaked in darkness nodded his head. "Yes, guarantee the success of their mission, then carry out your plan." Itachi nodded and turned to leave. If anyone had seen Itachi with his collar down at that moment, they would have wet themselves. He was smiling. It was the grin of a man who had seen far too much in his life, but it was there nonetheless. Itachi located Kisame within the halls of the structure easily. "Come with me. We have a mission." Kisame grinned. Itachi wondered once again if he was half-shark as he led the swordsman into the light of the above world. Naruto sweated as Neji leaned down next to him. With a single jerk, he yanked Naruto into a standing position, ignoring the blonde's yelp. "What do you intend to do to my cousin?" Neji asked bluntly and expectantly. Naruto glared. "And what is that supposed to mean?" Neji matched his glare. "Hinata, Imuto just returned home. She asked her father if she could be home late tomorrow night. When my father asked, she said that she was going on a date. Her father did not press the issue, but I knew exactly what she meant. So I came here." Neji smiled evilly. "I like you, Naruto. You're a nice guy. I see why Hinata, never mind. My point is, if you hurt her." He let it trail off, patting Naruto on the shoulder. Naruto paled as he felt a small amount of chakra being thrust into his shoulder. Neji smiled at his reaction. "I'm glad we understand each other. You have fun tomorrow night." Neji turned sharply, but Naruto called out, "Oi, Neji." He turned, then seeing the serious look on Naruto's face, walked back. "First off, I will never hurt Hinatakin. Ever, and that's a promise." Neji nodded. "Two, there's something I want you to look at." Naruto pulled a letter out of his pocket and gave it to Neji, who scanned it quickly. He paled and handed the letter back to Naruto. "So what does this mean?" Neji asked. Naruto shrugged. "I'm not sure. I just wanted you to know. Keep your eyes peeled. Who knows what could be happening behind the scenes?" Neji nodded. "Thank you for showing me this. Does Hinata know?" At Naruto's nod, Neji turned to leave. "I will see you later then, Naruto." Naruto watched until he left, then walked back upstairs to his bedroom. He touched his father's box gently, then picked it up and carried it downstairs, grabbing a blanket as he did so. He placed the box on the kitchen counter and found a couch in a room that looked like it was used for relaxation. He pulled the blanket over him and fell asleep almost instantly. For now that he knew, it just didn't feel right to be sleeping in his father's bed. As he was washing his face the next morning, he found that it was impossible to keep his new long hair out of his face for longer than 2 seconds. How the hell did Dad ever manage it? He whined, then sobered as he realized he would never get to ask him. On an impulse, he pulled it back as if to tie it in a ponytail. "Damn," he whistled. "Why didn't I think of this sooner? No more hair troubles." Naruto crowed. He ripped open a random cabinet, searching for something small and elastic. When he left his house for morning training, Naruto cut quite the path through the crowd of Konoha. Possessed of a leaner face which brought his whisker marks to greater prominence, he was quite the looker. High cheekbones, dark blue eyes, and long blonde hair. 2 locks came down on either side of his face, almost in the fashion of the Yamanaka, but less jaunty. He wore a pair of black pants, supplies pouch at his hip, and two kunai holsters, one on each leg. For a top, he chose a dark blue shirt and a jacket of the same color, both of which covered his custom-made ninja armor. Gone was the orange of youth, though Naruto still wished he could wear it. As he threaded his way to the training areas, he couldn't help but wonder at the people staring at him, not with hatred, but with smiles and sometimes admiration. He stopped at a small weapons shop, one which he remembered had refused to sell to him. He walked inside, expecting to be thrown out as usual, but was instead greeted by, "Good morning, Naruto. What may I help you with today?" Naruto, though shocked, recovered quickly. "Could you please tell me why no one's been mean to me yet? And why the hell haven't you thrown me out?" The man behind the weapons counter saddened. "Come here, boy. There's something we need to talk about." Puzzled, Naruto weaved his way through the racks of weapons and stopped at the counter. The man pulled forth a set of kunai, eliciting a wow from Naruto. "These kunai are made with reinforced stainless steel. They will never break, and, thanks to a little jutsu I developed, they will never dull. They are yours, free of charge, in an effort to make up for how I've treated you." Naruto stood rigid, shocked. But why? I mean, I know you all know that Kyuubi no longer possesses a corporeal form, but why? How come everyone's normal? Forget that. They're acting like I'm the son of a Hokage or something. Naruto trailed off. "Hey, wait a minute. You all knew the Yondaime. Why the hell didn't you recognize me sooner?" And Naruto, the man shouted. Naruto fell silent. "You still don't know the whole story. We were told by everyone that Kazama Erasure had given his life in the defense of the village. He had had his name changed after the war with Rock to protect his family from any vengeance seekers. He actually went by the name Kazama instead of Erasure up until his death." "Oh," Naruto mumbled. So our esteemed Godame called a village meeting to reveal everything about you. She didn't tell us you were Arashi's son until the end. Instead, she basically read us your resume, and it was impressive, kid. There was no one in the village after that who didn't respect you for defending our village from Shikaku." And then she dropped the bombshell. "Oh, and by the way, he's the son of Erasure. So you see why? And besides," the old man looked Naruto up and down. "You cut a mean figure, boy. I wouldn't object to my daughter dating you, that's for sure." He finished with a wink. Naruto blushed. "Who's your daughter?" The man drew himself up proudly. "Konoha's #1 weapon master, besides myself." Naruto's face lit up in recognition. "Tenten. The one and only." Naruto smiled, content, then said, "Old man, I can't just accept these weapons for free. But you won't let me pay for them?" The man shook his head. Naruto grinned. "Well, fine then." And Naruto walked over to the single-bladed weapons of the katana variety. "So tell me, old man, which one would you suggest for me?" The old man almost leapt over the counter to Naruto's side. "Well, from your body build and your size, I'd say you're a taijutsu master with an equal speciality in ninjutsu. You're fast, but you can hit hard with the best of them. For you." He trailed off as he browsed the racks. "For you." And then he stopped moving. He slowly turned to look Naruto in the eye. "You haven't activated your bloodline yet, have you?" Naruto groaned. "No. And you can just." The man laughed. "Relax, Naruto. It's impossible to activate before the end of puberty, though having had the Kyuubi in you, you should be able to activate it any day now." Naruto grinned. "Really?" The man nodded, then remembered what he had though of. "Wait right here, boy." And he disappeared into the back of the shop. He returned with a long cloth-wrapped bundle. He handed it to Naruto, motioning for him to unwrap it. "Not many people know this, but your father was the only one to ever defeat me in an Iajutsu match. As a reward, I crafted this blade especially for him. When he died and the sword was recovered, I swore never to let it see the light of day again." However, Naruto gasped as the magnificent blade was revealed. The blue metal shone dully, but it was the most beautiful piece of weaponry Naruto had ever seen. He gave it a few test slashes, noticing how balanced the blade was and how perfect it fit his hand. "However, I didn't know he had a son. That blade is yours by right. I have a feeling your father left something for you to read about it in one of the scrolls I helped him scribio." The man paled. "Shouldn't have said that. Trust me though, this blade is much, much more than a simple katana. It's yours for free, so you can pay for the kunai set if you want. Naruto grinned and pulled out Gamakan, emptying it into the man's hand. Pleasure doing business with you. Naruto exchanged his old kunai for the new ones and strapped the sword to his back with a sword belt selected from the man's shop. As he left, the man called out, "By the way, my name is Busho. Come back again." Naruto laughed and turned, only to run into Tenten. As she fell backwards with a yelp, Naruto caught her deftly. "Oops, wasn't looking where I was going. Are you okay?" Tenten, despite herself, blushed. "Yeah, I'm fine." "Hey," she yelled, noticing the sword on Naruto's back. "What the hell are you doing with that?" She jumped away from Naruto, two kunai appearing in her hands. They didn't stay there long, though, and Naruto found himself rolling to the side to avoid the daggers. "Tenten," Busho roared. The kunai twirled around his fingers. "How many times have I told you not to attack the customers?" "That man is stealing Naruto-kun's blade." Tenten yelled back. "Give me my kunai back. They're the only ones I have on me right now." That, apparently, was the wrong thing to say, as Busho's neck became redder than a tomato. "What?" he roared. "These are all you have on you?" Tenten made a shushing noise. "Of course not. But he doesn't need to know." Busho sighed. "Tenten, take a closer look at the young man." Tenten grumbled as she met Naruto's blue eyes. She paled. "Oh, Kama-sama, I'm so sorry, Naruto-kun." She blushed. Busho laughed. "Why don't you make it up to him, honey? Teach him how to use that sword of his before he cuts his own toes off." Tenten's face went from fright to delight. "Excellent. How about it, Naruto-kun?" Naruto smiled. "Sure. I was planning on just basic training today, but I would love to learn how to use this." Tenten blushed again, causing Naruto to wonder just what he had gotten himself into. "Okay, Naruto-kun, meet me at the training area." And she poofed away, leaving a laughing Busho. "Better go, kid. She hates tardiness. See the scar?" And he pointed to a vicious gash on his cheek. Naruto paled and poofed away with a hasty seal. Busho laughed again. Gets him every time. Chapter 13, Living Life to the Full. Naruto swarped into existence at the training field to find Tenten standing before him, wielding a simple katana. "I'm going to use a generic katana so I don't hurt you. Okay, Naruto? There's something you need to understand. I know all about your fights with Hinata, Lee, and Tsunadesima, and frankly, that's great and all, but right now you are far weaker than me when it comes to weapons. For example, take a look around you." Annoyed, Naruto did a quick surveillance, then did a double take and inspected the area more closely. Dozens of traps surrounded the training field. Puzzled, Naruto turned back to Tenten. "I'm glad you noticed. Bringing your half-dead body to Tsunadesima didn't really appeal to me. If you stray too far out of the training area, you'll set up some traps. So don't get pushed out," Tenten yelled. Naruto paled. Tenten grinned. "Now, Blondie, we're going to start by teaching you the various forms of katana swordplay. These will similar to the ones used by the 7 swordsmen of the mist, so don't be discouraged if you can't get them right away." Naruto nodded, then paid rapt attention as Tenten began to execute a series of moves. Naruto was surprised to notice that he was able to follow them, and was able to detect exactly when Tenten switched forms, though it made his eyes hurt a little. Tenten stopped after a while, then asked, "How many forms do you think I went through?" Naruto gave a trademark fox grin. 7. Tenten's eyes widened. "That wasn't a guess, was it?" As Naruto shook his head, Tenten smiled. "I guess you really are all you're cracked up to be. Okay, here's the first form. It's used when attacking or defending against multiple ninja at once. It's an all-around form, so this will be the one you settle into when you initiate a battle. This form has no disadvantages. Okay, draw and begin." Naruto drew his katana and moved to stand next to Tenten who, after blushing slightly, began to slowly execute the stance and various moves that resulted from the form. After 2 hours of this practice, which then involved increasing in speed and variations, Tenten stopped suddenly. She jumped away from Naruto, grinning. "Okay, Blondie, you're getting the hang of it. I noticed that you follow my variations really quickly. That shows that you have a real knack for swordsmanship. After you've been taught the 4th stance, you should be able to learn any form just by learning the stance. For now, stick to the shicho. Ready?" And without waiting for an answer, Tenten leapt towards Naruto, blades slicing from top, right diagonally. Naruto slid into the Shicho stance almost subconsciously and parried the blow, allowing Tintin's sword to slide down his. He attempted a chop slice from the left, but Tintin anticipated such a common parry and recovered magnificently, blocking with the hilt of her katana. They continued in the same manner for another half hour, until Tintin began a flurry of blows that completely overwhelmed Naruto's defense. As Tintin's sword flicked up to his neck, he laughed helplessly. "Well, that's it then. Same time tomorrow morning?" Naruto asked hopefully. "I'll learn all 7 forms in 1 week." Tintin laughed. "Like I said, and especially at the rate you're going, that will be entirely possible. Mastering the forms, though?" Tintin grinned evilly. "Ain't no way to get around the time it takes for that. See you tomorrow, Blondie." And with a seal, she poofed away. Naruto grinned at her departure and began to practice his new sword skill. An hour later, Hinata and Sakura arrived from opposite ends of the training field. Naruto waved to them, then intercepted Rock Lee's flying kick with one hand. Shifting his grip, he swung Lee around and into the ground. Lee popped back on his feet, laughing. "It is good to see that our team commander is always on his guard." Naruto laughed. "Okay, Hinata-kun, Sakura-kun, come on over. We've got teamwork to work on, so listen up." Hinata and Sakura came over, and Naruto immediately slashed his katana at Hinata and Sakura. They yelped and were driven together so that their shoulders were touching. "And that means any petty differences you have, set them aside. I know you two are good friends, and frankly I don't care what you two are bickering about for now. Right now you will set those differences aside and work together. Are we clear?" Hinata stood straight and nodded. "OSU, Naruto-kun." Sakura nodded as well. Naruto smiled, then began to outline their training schedule for the rest of the week. "And on the last couple days, if we're ready, I'm going to use a technique I've been developing for the last few months, and we'll train our teamwork through action. Any questions?" At their silence, Naruto nodded, and they began to work on foreman formations and combination attacks. Naruto worked them until they ran out of sweat, but Naruto was always keeping pace with them, never leaving them behind, and always lending a hand. Eventually, Lee, Hinata, and Sakura began to do the same, helping and supporting each other in their movements. After 3 grueling hours, Naruto held up a hand. "That's enough for today. Be back here tomorrow morning at the same time." Dismissed. Naruto turned to head back to town. As he walked, Hinata ran up to walk beside him. "You're a good squad leader, Naruto-kun. I think you'd do great with a team of genin." Naruto laughed. "I dunno, Hinata-kun. I don't have much experience with children." Hinata laughed. "I disagree, Naruto-kun. The only example you have is your own childhood. You're very insightful, and I think you'd be able to teach 3 completely different kids really well." Naruto smiled. "Thanks, Hinata-kun. I have given it some thought. After all, taking on a team of genin is one of the requirements for Hokage. That, or taking on an apprentice, whom you can still have when you become Hokage." "You know a lot about becoming Hokage, Naruto-kun," Hinata mused. "When did you learn all this?" Naruto grinned. "During the only non-combat class I paid attention to in the academy. Iruka-sensei almost fainted when he realized I was paying such rapt attention." Naruto thought for a while. "Actually, during my training with Ero Sennin, I learned a ton of history and war strategy. I did this in my own time, so that I could be better prepared to lead a village." Hinata smiled, eyes misty. "You've grown up so much, Naruto-kun, and yet not at all." Naruto smiled. "Why don't you get some rest, Hinata-kun? We've got a date tonight, remember?" Hinata gasped. "I can't believe I almost forgot. Come by the Hyuga house at 6. See you then, Naruto-kun." And Naruto was once again left alone, his only company the fleeting puff of smoke left by his departed friend. He laughed at some inside joke, then poofed away himself. He had a few things to take care of. Naruto decided to walk to the Hyuga compound for 2 reasons. 1, because it was probably bad etiquette to use the Shunshin Jutsu to reach someone's home, and 2, because he wanted to approach the compound on foot to try and hear any conspiracies. Besides, I've got to wear in these clothes. Naruto had found some sort of formal wear in a closet in some random bedroom. Admiring the quality of the outfit, Naruto quickly donned the navy blue robe. After deciding that he looked like a samurai, He set out to see if he could glean any information. He didn't, and arrived at the front door without excitement. Unsure of what to do, he spied a small button on the side of the gate. He reached out and pressed it, and immediately a chime sounded. He stood around for a few seconds until a white-eyed child came running to the door. Naruto saw that it was a young girl, no more than 11, and probably around Konohamaru's age. He smiled as she approached, causing her to blush profusely. Must be Hinataken's sister, Naruto thought. Hi, I'm Naruto. I'm here to pick up Hinataken. May I come in, please? The girl smiled. It's about time my sister got you on a date. I was wondering when she would penetrate that thick skull of yours. Come on in. As she swung open the gate, she added, My name's Hanabi. Naruto laughed. It's my pleasure to meet you, Hanabiken. I'm sure we'll be good friends. But for now, could you show me in? Hanabi motioned Naruto to follow and led him further into the Hyuga house. Naruto was struck by how feudal Japanish the architecture and decor was. Must be tradition again, Naruto thought glumly. Hanabi led him to a courtyard and motioned that Naruto should sit down. He did so Indian style. Hinata-Nezen will be here shortly. I think she's still getting ready. Hanabi giggled, then ran off into the house. Well, she seems a light, Naruto thought happily as he sat in the courtyard, simply passing the time with a calm meditation he learned from Erosenin. Despite being a super pervert, the old man was far wiser than he had ever let on before Naruto's true apprenticeship. While he was meditating, Naruto became aware of a certain tingly sensation in his eyes, right above them in his head. Annoyed, he stomped out the feeling and it subsided, but he could still sense it just beyond his perceptions. After a few minutes, he became aware of another presence. It was a chakra signature he had never felt before, one that commanded respect. Naruto opened his eyes and rose, only to be greeted by the stern face of the head of the Hyuga house. Naruto stared at the tall man for a few moments before giving a slight bow of respect. Arigato, Hayashishima, for allowing me to enter your home. As Naruto unbended, he swore he saw astonishment flash across the man's face before fading away into impassivity. You are welcome, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto glared. You speak my clan's name as though you were familiar with it. Hayashi returned the glare with equal severity. I have known your clan since I was a small child. Is it not normal that I be acquainted with the name of a noble clan of Konoha, being the head of one myself? Naruto nodded, grimacing. Yes, it makes perfect sense. Indeed, Hayashi muttered. Unconsciously, the two men began to circle each other, stopping when they had switched positions. Suddenly, Hayashi laughed. He laughed long and hard, clutching his stomach and wiping away tears. When he had finished, he smiled at Naruto, who was shocked to see genuine kindness in Hayashi's eyes. Forgive me, Naruto-san, but you are more like your father than I could have possibly imagined, Hayashi explained. I apologize for my little game, but I had to see if you were as determined as they say you are for myself. Naruto smiled. No problem, Hayashishima. Though I have to admit, I thought I was going to have to fight my way through here to get Hinataken. Hayashi chuckled. Yes, well there is that matter. Niji told me that you had no intention of hurting Hinata and would in fact defend her with your life. Is this true? Naruto thumped his chest. On my word, upon which I never go back. Hayashi smiled. My eldest daughter has said the same thing, and she has always kept her word. His smile became one of sadness as he walked closer to Naruto. Bending to his ear, he said, You and I will speak when you return from your mission to the Sound Country. There is much we need to discuss concerning the, conspiracy you have uncovered. Naruto nodded, then sensed another chakra signature enter the room. Realizing who it was, he leaned around Hayashi and let his jaw drop to the floor. Hinata stood before him clad in a resplendent pale violet kimono. Her hair tumbled behind her head and gleamed blue. Her pearly eyes shone with happiness. Hinataken, you look amazing, Naruto forced out, trying to shake off his astonishment. Come on, it's just Hinataken, right? Sure, she's beautiful all the time, but wow, she's gorgeous. I mean, oh no. Hinata smiled. Arigato, Naruto-kun. Shall we get going? Naruto held up a hand. Hold on a sec, Hinataken. He turned to face Hayashi. Hayashishima, are you alright with me taking your daughter out tonight? Hayashi had never been more shocked. Here was the loudest ninja in Konoha, keeper of Kyubi, and possibly one of the most powerful shinobi ever, asking him with utmost respect if he could date his daughter. Of course, Naruto. Hayashi smiled. Naruto grinned in return, then extended his arm to Hinatakin, who took it demurely. Ignoring the fact that Hinata's soft form was slightly pressed up against his own, and that he really enjoyed the intimacy, Naruto led Hinata out of the compound. Well, here we are, Naruto said. Hinata smiled. Naruto, this is amazing. How did you know that I like sushi? Naruto grinned. That's my little secret. Now come on. We're only just gonna make the reservation. Reservation? Naruto. But he had already led them to the seating hostess. Hello, ma'am. Our reservation is under Tsunade. Hinata paled. And Naruto-kun, did you seriously? The seating hostess smiled. Ah yes, Uzumaki Naruto and Hyuga Hinata. Step right this way, please. And, grabbing a couple menus, she led them away. Naruto almost had to drag the stunned Hinata behind them as they weaved through the tables. They ended up next to a window facing a starlit sky over the forest surrounding Konoha. Naruto thanked the hostess, then pulled out a chair for Hinata. Still dazed, she accepted the seat with a muttered arigato. Naruto seated himself, then looked at Hinata, puzzled. He began to panic when Hinata remained in her dazed state. Ah, I'm sorry, Hinatakin. Did I do something wrong? Naruto asked helplessly. Hinata shook her head and snapped her hand out to grab one of Naruto's flailing appendages. She smiled as he calmed down, staring at her hand and closing his. No, Naruto-kun, it's exactly the opposite. I'm just surprised, that's all. But then again, I should have expected to be surprised, nay? Naruto laughed. Huh, you just wait. Inside, however, Naruto was anything but certain. Damn it, just how do I feel? I loved Sakurakin for years. Why do I feel like this around Hinatakin? I never did around Sakurakin. What the hell? This is just a date, right? I sure went to a lot of trouble, though, for just one date. Naruto was interrupted in his musings by a waiter who had approached his table. Good evening, Naruto-sama, Hyuga-sama. It is our pleasure to. Naruto interrupted him with an upraised hand. Hold it right there. Do you treat all your customers this way? As if they were a noble clan? The waiter looked puzzled. But of course, Naruto-sama. All of our guests here are treated with the utmost respect. Your grandfather saw to that years ago. Now what may I get you two to drink? Naruto's hand was once again taken by Hinata's and placed gently on the table. Just 2 waters for now, please. Thank you, Hinata said quietly. She turned to Naruto and was concerned to see tears forming in eyes. She calmed somewhat when she noticed his smile, but still asked, Naruto-kun, why are you crying? Naruto laughed helplessly and wiped his eyes. Because I'm happy. I just found out that my clan was, well, nice. I'm just glad my ancestors weren't jerks or anything. Hinata laughed. So what did you do this morning? Where did that sword come from that you had this morning? Naruto smiled and related the story of how he had met Busho, the weapons dealer, and about their conversation. After they ordered their sushi rolls, Naruto then explained why Tenten was training him, and just what. As their dinner arrived, their conversation turned to lighter matters, such as the state of Konoha, what had happened since Naruto had been gone. Throughout the night, Naruto was pleasantly surprised by Hinata. Gone was her quiet, timid demeanor. Sure, she was still a little quiet, but she had confidence and was not afraid to raise her voice. And she had a sharp wit. Naruto found that he enjoyed exchanging repartee with his. You're what? Come on, kid. I'm dying to hear this one. Shut up, Bakakitsune. After the meal had been eaten, Naruto loosed a soft burb of contentedness. Overriding Hinata's giggle with an excuse me, Naruto motioned over the waiter. After a few soft words, Naruto examined the check and paid the amount. He screwed his eyes upwards in thought, then laid the tip on the table and got up to stand behind Hinata's chair. He pulled it out as she rose, replacing the chair and offering her his arm, which she took once again. As he led her out, he asked her as offhandedly as he could, Hinatakin, would you like to take a walk? Hinata nodded vigorously. Yes, I'd love to, Naruto-kun. Naruto chuckled, earning a light jab from Hinata, and led her into the only park in Konoha, though it was certainly large. As they reached the gate encircling the forested area, a sharp pain lanced through Naruto's head, causing him to groan and lean against Hinata. Ow! Kamisama, that was murder. What the hell is going on? Naruto muttered vehemently. Naruto-kun, what happened? Hinata asked worriedly. Naruto groaned, clenching his eyelids shut. It's my forehead. It keeps hurting, and it's been doing it all night. I can't stand it. Could you take a look at it with your Byakugan? Of course, Naruto-kun. Here, sit down. And she led him to a bench, helping him ease into it. She knelt in front of him and activated her bloodline. She gasped as she focused in on his eyes, then released her all-seeing eye. Naruto-kun, can you open your eyes? I think so. Why? Naruto asked, as he opened her eyes. Hinata had always thought Naruto's eyes were the most beautiful in Konoha. They were a dark cerulean blue, and they shone with happiness and sadness and all sorts of emotions. Hinata was blown away by what she saw. Instead of Naruto's normal blue eyes, they had become something entirely different. The whites of his eyes had become a metallic blue, and his irises had melded into them, so it appeared as if his pupil was alone black in a vast, silvery sea. Dumbfounded, Hinata watched as his pupils enlarged, then began to change color rapidly, from red to blue to green to black and back again. When they finished, Hinata saw that they had become the color of purest silver. She reached for her weapons pouch to pull out a kunai to show Naruto, then cursed softly as she realized she had left it at home. She activated her Byakugan once more. After noticing that chakra had built up behind Naruto's eyes, she glanced around until she spotted a small lake. Naruto-kun, come with me and close your eyes. There's something I want to show you. Naruto complied, rising. Hinata took his arm in hers and led him over to the lake. After checking that she could see her own face in it, she turned to Naruto. Open your eyes, we're next to a lake. Look at your reflection and tell me what you see. Naruto opened his eyes. Hinata noticed that while the silver and blue colors in them shone with a metallic gleam, they did not give off light of their own. She watched as Naruto blinked, then leaned over into the lake. He gasped, Hinata-kun, what would happen to my eyes? They're all blue and silvery, and my pupil, it's silver. Hinata turned Naruto to face her. Naruto, I think that's your Kekai Genkai. You have a Dojutsu just like the Hyuga and the Uchiha. Naruto looked at Hinata for a few moments, then began to panic. Hinata-kun, how do I turn it off? Hinata laughed. I'm not sure, but I noticed when I looked at you with Byakugan that there was some chakra stored just behind your eyes. Can you sense it? When Naruto nodded, she said, Okay, now gently pull on that chakra. Naruto tried, and Hinata saw that his eyes had changed back to normal. You did it, Naruto-kun. Naruto laughed, picking up Hinata-kun by the waist and spinning her around. I did it. Woohoo. I have an Uzumaki Kekai Genkai. Yada. Hinata laughed as Naruto spun around. She eeped as she was suddenly returned to the earth by a blushing, grinning Naruto, who looked more like a fox than ever before. Hinata realized that she had passed over her crush for the loudmouth long ago. No, she loved the blonde shinobi. She wanted to support him and be there for him. She wanted to make him laugh and be happy. She loved him, but she was sad because she knew in her heart that she would never have Naruto. She decided right then and there that if she could not have him, then she would have a good friend nonetheless. No one could ever have too many good friends. She returned to the world of the living to see Naruto still standing as he was before. Sorry, Hinata-kun, She stopped him. No, it's okay, Naruto-kun. That was fun, she said laughing. I'm happy for you, Naruto-kun, she added with a smile. As Naruto's heart leapt in his chest yet again, he became aware of that curious feeling. It felt as though his heart was being constricted and his chest was clenching. He didn't like it at all. Oh, Kamisama, what do I do? How do I feel? And then it hit him like a ton of bricks. He liked Hinata-kun more than he would ever love Sakura-kun. He could be himself. He enjoyed her company immensely, and she could make him feel better with a simple, beautiful smile. He could make her laugh, and he could make her happy. More so, he wanted to make her happy. He couldn't stand the thought of her being sad. Naruto realized that Hinata liked him immensely, something that everyone knew but him until he returned to Konoha. I need to make up for lost time, he thought. All those years, and I never knew. Time for something bold. And with that thought, he grabbed Hinata's arm and led her gently back to the bench they had found. As Hinata sat down puzzled, she giggled. What? Asked Naruto, puzzled himself. Your eyes. Hinata laughed. They've activated again. Naruto muttered and tried to pull back his chakra. When Hinata nodded that they had receded again, Naruto sat down. He ran a hand through his pulled-back hair and sighed. Hinata-kun, I need to tell you something. Hinata paled. This is it, she thought. This is where he tells me I agreed to dinner so that I could tell you? Let's just be friends. Naruto inhaled deeply. Hinata-kun, at first I agreed to take you out this evening so that I could spend some time with you as a friend and leave company as friends. Hinata looked down, her fears confirmed. Then she realized something. At first? She asked, confused. Naruto nodded. Yeah, but as the evening went on, I realized that I put more work into it than I thought. And we had so much fun together. Laughing, talking, having a good time. I really liked it, Hinata-kun. Hinata looked up, hope gleaming in her eyes. Naruto thought then and there that she was more beautiful than he had ever thought, besides her looks, which were stunning. No respect, having to earn everything. Loyal and honest, smart and funny. Naruto wanted to kick himself for not noticing before. And I had been so confused as to what I felt. Hinata-kun, I'm pretty smart, modesty aside, but I'm pretty stupid when it comes to stuff like feelings. I had no idea what it was that I felt. But I think I know now. He took Hinata's hand tentatively. Hinata-kun, I think I'm falling in love with you. Hinata paled. Tears formed. I knew I fell asleep as I was getting ready. I knew it was all just a dream. I'm gonna wake up to Hanabanichin saying, he's here. And I'm gonna realize that we haven't even gone out yet. And then, Hinata-kun? Oh damn it. I knew you didn't feel the same. Why couldn't I have kept my big mouth? The rest of his lamentation was cut short as Hinata reached out with her other hand to take Naruto's. She squeezed it gently, then reached up to cup his face. I know this is a dream, but I can't help myself. I've been waiting to hear this for 10 years, and I just can't help myself. Hinata said softly. She took Naruto's hand again, noticing that Naruto was smiling like a fool. Naruto-kun, why are you OW? Hinata yelped as Naruto pinched her stomach. What was that for? Naruto continued to smile. To show that you weren't dreaming, Hinata-kun. Now, let's try this again. He cleared his throat. Hinata-kun, I'm falling in love with you, he said softly. And I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner. Hinata stared at Naruto for a moment, the pain from his pinch subsiding. With a gasp, she launched herself towards Naruto. With a yelp, he caught her. Hinata, are you crying? Naruto asked. However, when the pale girl pulled back to look him in the eye, he saw that she was laughing. No, Naruto-kun. I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I'm happy. And she buried her face in his chest. I'm happy because I feel the same way, Naruto-kun. I feel the same way. Naruto smiled as he brought his arms around to hold Hinata closer to him. I hope you're seeing this, Dad. You too, Mom. I won't ever let her go, just like you too. I promise. Naruto started at something, then realized that Hinata had almost fallen asleep. He pushed her away slightly. Hinata-kun, I need to get you home before your father throws a fit. Ah, to hell with the old fart. I'm 16, Hinata mumbled. Naruto gasped. Hinata-kun. Hinata laughed. Gomen, you're right. And she got up. Naruto stood up as well, this time to offer his hand. Hinata smiled and intertwined her fingers with his, and they set off, leaning on each other. When they got to Hinata's house, she turned to face him. Arigato, Naruto-kun. I had a wonderful time. But what do you want to tell people? About us? Naruto grinned. I'll tell them that the most beautiful girl in Konoha has agreed to be my girlfriend. How's that? Hinata laughed, then hugged her new boyfriend. You're amazing, Naruto-kun. Good night, and see you tomorrow. As she turned to leave, she was stopped by a hand on her arm. The hand turned her around, and Naruto kissed her, softly. Shocked, Hinata kissed him back, but Naruto pulled away. Damn it, too quickly, Hinata thought, then blushed at the thought. Good night, Hinata-kun. If I am amazing, then know that it is all for you. See you tomorrow. And don't think this means easier training. Hinata laughed as she walked inside. Naruto watched until she was safely inside, then turned to walk back to his new house, whistling a tune. As he reached his door, he thought of something that made his blood run cold and the hair on his neck stand up. He brought his hand up to his head and slapped it. Oh crap! Sakura-kun. A few blocks away, Sakura sneezed in her sleep. Naruto stared at the box in what he now realized must have been his parents' room. With a shudder, he lifted the box gingerly off the bed and carried it to another bedroom, one that looked like someone his age had inhabited. I can't do anything about Sakura right now, he thought resignedly. I guess I'll look through the scrolls and see just what they're all about. Naruto opened the box, removing the 3 scrolls and laying them on the bed beside him. He picked up the first one. Opening it, he saw that it was a scroll for the Rasengan. "Oh man," Naruto complained. "Ero-sennin already taught me this technique." He was about to toss the scroll aside when he noticed its unusual heft. That's odd. Doesn't it just explain the 3 steps? Naruto thought. He decided to give the scroll another chance. Pulling it open, he realized that it did indeed. It began by describing the 3 steps necessary to master the Rasengan. The key word, Naruto realized, was began. The scroll not only encompassed the 3 steps, but contained the Yandame's notes on how a certain step could be used outside of the Rasengan, and Naruto was delighted to see that one of them involved the first step's use in water. Naruto continued reading, then tried to form a one-handed Rasengan. He was shocked to see that it formed, compact and ready to destroy. All Naruto did was follow his father's advice. Begin by spinning 1 strand of chakra at a time, then add more in other directions as closely as you could to the preceding strands. This was something Jiraiya had refused to teach him, saying that he could do the Rasengan just fine with his clones, and that one-handedness would come with practice. Naruto excitedly began reading more. The next part involved creating an Odama Rasengan, something Naruto had already thought of, so skip to the next part. Naruto saw a drawing of a ninja forming a Rasengan, then throwing it. Naruto looked on in amazement. The technique involved sheer control and power, but apparently it could be done, though the Yandame mentioned that only he had ever accomplished throwing a Rasengan. Naruto quickly memorized the technique and continued. He reached the end of the scroll and read. Despite the power of the Rasengan, it is in fact an unfinished technique. The Rasengan takes form manipulation to the extreme, but it was intended to do the same with nature manipulation. I was unable to accomplish this, and so the Rasengan remains a half-completed technique. Naruto rolled up the scroll and placed it back in the box reverently. He then formed a Rasengan and began to try and convert his chakra to wind, just as he did with his jutsu. It was harder without seals, and Naruto had to let the swirling chakra dissipate. Naruto tried again a few more times unsuccessfully, then threw himself backwards onto the bed in frustration. He stared at the ceiling, muttering. Then, he had an idea. Sitting up, he held a new Rasengan in front of him. Satisfied, he let it dissipate, then concentrated. He tried to form wind chakra in his hand before spinning it about. After a few minutes, Naruto began to form a new Rasengan and saw that it hummed with a white light and contained blade-like eddies of wind, all swirling about it a tiny ball of destruction. The Rasengan grew to normal size, then stopped, though Naruto felt as though it would burst any second. After holding it for a few minutes, Naruto let it dissipate with a sigh. He tried to form another one, and saw thrilled to see it come quicker. He let it dissipate once more, then tried it with demonic chakra. This was easier, though Naruto thought he heard the sound of a vacuum in the middle. He vaguely remembered using the demonic Rasengan, then figured it wasn't special enough to merit its own name. The wind one, though? I'll call it Futon Rasengan, Naruto said aloud happily, congratulating himself on the originality of the name. He desperately wanted to try throwing a Rasengan, but decided it wasn't worth the village's newfound respect for him. Instead, he reached for the next scroll in line. He pulled it open. He read, a detailed account of the technique. Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God. Naruto read on, and was greeted by a disclaimer. Warning, only those possessing the Uzumaki Kekkai Genkai will be able to use this jutsu. Naruto grinned, then reached for the next scroll, guessing what it contained. Opening it revealed, the Sharingan, Jujutsu, and Kekkei Genkai of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto paled and began reading. Naruto opened his eyes to sunlight streaming into the Uzumaki clan home. Groaning, he performed his morning rituals and returned to the box. He still had an hour before he had to meet Tintin for sword practice, so he got dressed quickly and strapped on his blade, which he named Makai, or Hell. He picked up the scroll on the Sharingan and reviewed it quickly, then went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. Sharingan, he shouted, pushing chakra into his eyes. He watched as they changed to the metallic blue and silver pupil he had seen the night before with Hinata. Hinatakin, Naruto thought, a warm feeling enveloping him. Sakurakin, Naruto thought as a feeling of dread overwhelmed him. He shook the feeling off and deactivated his Jujutsu. He resolved to do two things before attempting anything the scroll suggested. Be able to activate it within a second of trying, just Neji, Hinata, and Sasuke could, and to be able to leave it on all day with no detriment to his chakra or physical stamina. Naruto began to practice, and by the time he left for the training field, he could activate it in 1 second, which he figured was good enough after just having activated it for the first time. Grinning at his reflection in the mirror, he formed the seal for Shunshin and poofed away. Tintin was tapping her foot impatiently when Naruto poofed into existence on the training field, Makai in hand. "Hi, Tintin. Sorry I'm." He was cut off by the weapon master leaping towards him, katana in hand. Without thinking, Naruto activated the Sharingan and similarly leapt forward. This surprised Tintin so much that Naruto was able to parry the enraged weapon mistress' first strike perfectly, so that he could disengage and trip her feet out from underneath her. Unable to get over her shock and amazement, Tintin exclaimed, "Naruto, what the hell happened to your eyes?" In like a split second, they became all blue and silvery. "Do you have a blood limit?" Naruto grinned, then extended a hand to his trainer, who accepted it and was pulled into the standing position. She graciously accepted her katana from Naruto, then assumed an "I'm waiting" pose. "It's my Sharingan," Naruto yelled happily. "I just found out about it last night. It's so cool looking, way neater than the Sharingan." Tintin laughed. "Awesome. I'm really happy for you. However, it's time to learn the next form, Surisu. This form is all about combating ninjutsu users. I've decided, by the way, to teach you only 4 forms. Shicho, you already know, Surisu, which you're about to learn, and then 2 more, which you'll also learn today. They will be Makashi, which is good against Jinjutsu, and Adaru, which is all about offense. You will then decide, at the end to today, which form you will pursue to the exclusion of all others. Using other forms, if you don't dedicate your life to mastering all of them, will detract from your strength with the sword. Clear?" Naruto nodded. "Crystal, let's get it started. I don't want to interfere with my team's training." Tintin nodded and began to show Naruto Surisu, Makashi, and Adaru. As Naruto watched, he kept his Sharingan active. He noticed that he could analyze the strengths and weaknesses of every form, as well as possible variations and combinations. He was shocked to see that this happened instantly. He chalked it up to the ability of the Sharingan to perceive and analyze any jutsu or kanji seal. However, the scroll mentioned nothing about the information being stored in his mind like the Sharingan. Naruto also realized that his vision was greatly enhanced, something the scroll said wouldn't happen for a few days. However, Naruto could see with the eyes of a bird of prey, not as far, but with excruciating detail to about 50 meters. "Thanks, Kyubi," Naruto thought. It was the only reason he could find for his accelerated bloodline ability. As Tintin finished, she asked, "Well, which one did you like the best?" Naruto grinned. "If I had to choose, I would train in the Adara form. However," and with a whirl of motion he whipped Makai out of its sheath and flourished it, settling into a stance as such. Blade pointed directly away from Naruto, the bottom of the hilt almost touching his left shoulder, right hand leading and left hand supporting, so that his arms were holding the sword like a flute. Tintin gasped. That's a variation of the Adara form. It's so perfect. It combines its strengths with those of Surisu. How did you do that?" "It took me months of training before I could create variations of the stances." Naruto grinned. "Obviously, you must have noticed that my eyes are not what they once were." Tintin almost ran over to Naruto and approached him brazenly, stepping right up so that their noses were inches apart. She stared into his Sharingan and gasped. "Oh, Naruto, they're beautiful. I mean, damn, that's awesome." Tintin sputtered. "When did this happen?" "Last night. Hinatakin used her Byakugan to help me activate it. I've been studying about it since, and I can now analyze any jutsu, seal, and apparently kenjutsu. Maybe even taijutsu too. But the scroll didn't say anything about storing that knowledge like the Sharingan." Tintin shrugged. "Blame the Kyuubi," she said cheerfully. "For once, your burden has paid off." Naruto laughed. "Oh, it has before, believe me." "Damn straight, brat. You'd be dead without me." "This has been a recording," thought back Naruto. "Fix your broken record, Kyuubi." Naruto nodded. "What should I call my new form? I mean, I plan on training exclusively in it. Shouldn't it have an awesome name?" Tintin nodded. "Call it the Shurin form. A blend of offense and unwavering defense." "Yada," Naruto exulted. "So come on, let's start training." As Sakura approached the training field where Naruto and Tintin were engaged in a vicious duel, she noticed that Hinata was already there, watching. As she did, Sakura also noticed that there was an unusual look of contentedness about her visage. She must really like Naruto, thought Sakura. I wonder what Naruto-kun feels. Oh well, guess I'll find out tonight, nay? She walked over to stand beside Hinata. "Good morning, Hinata," Sakura said by way of greeting. Hinata laughed. "Sakura, you must have slept in. It's noon." Sakura looked at the paler girl, puzzled. Way too cheerful. "In that case, Naruto-kun's late." "Oi, Naruto-kun." At the sound of Sakura's shout, Naruto stumbled. "Huh, victory is mine," Tintin yelled, seeing the opening. With a whoosh of air, she brought her katana down towards Naruto's neck, where she stopped it, cool metal pressed against warm flesh. "Kuso," shouted Naruto. "I was so close." "Huh," retorted Tintin. "Not even. I've got business to take care of for the next few mornings, so I'll meet you here on the last day before your mission. Train in your Shurin form for now, and then we'll see how you do in an all-out weapons match." Naruto gulped. "Any weapon?" Tintin grinned evilly. "See you later." And she poofed away. Naruto groaned and heaved himself off the ground. He wiped the sweat off his brow as he approached the two kunoichi. "Hiya Sakura-kun, Hinata-kun. I was thinking that Toda." Naruto was interrupted by a burst of smoke as Hinata disappeared and was replaced by Rock Lee, who leapt at Naruto with a battle cry. Not even batting an eye, Naruto swiftly sidestepped and brought an open palm to Rock Lee's face, which he applied some force to. The result was that the rest of Lee's body continued where his head did not. Naruto then slammed the horizontal Lee down to the ground. "And what, pray tell me, did you do with Hinata-kun? That wasn't a hinge you just dropped. That was a replacement," Naruto growled. Lee only laughed. "Huh, you have bested me again, Konoha's #1 surprising ninja. But I will have you yet. Hinata-kun was in on it from the beginning. She's over there, just beyond the undergrowth. She'll be dazed, but otherwise fine." Naruto nodded, then grinned. "You will never catch me off guard, Lee. Never. The two of you wait here while I fetch Hinata-kun, then we'll start the training." Lee nodded and extended an arm to Naruto, who used it to propel him into a run towards where Lee had pointed. When Naruto came through the undergrowth, he was greeted by a smiling Hinata leaning against a tree in a small circular clearing. "I knew you wouldn't fall for it, but I had to let Lee try," Hinata explained as Naruto approached, not sure on what he thought about the situation. "Besides," Hinata said as she walked towards her new boyfriend, "it was the perfect opportunity to get you alone with me for a few seconds." "Wait, what?" Naruto began, but was cut off by Hinata's lips pressing against his own. Damn fine way to be told to shut up, thought Naruto. After a few seconds, Naruto pulled away while extending a hand to stop Hinata from advancing if she tried. She did. "Naruto-kun, Hinata-kun, Sakura-kun, and Lee still don't know. I have to tell Sakura tonight and Lee tomorrow, but I want to tell her, not to have her find out. It will hurt her less, I think. If we stay here too long, Sakura-kun will make the leap in logic. She's very smart. So let's just do our training, and I'll come by your house tonight after the date with Sakura-kun, okay?" Hinata nodded, then pulled her gaze away from Naruto and realized that Naruto had led her right back to the training area. You were right, Lee. She was a bit dazed. Anyways, here's the plan for today. Sakura collapsed on her bed, moaning softly. She had been trained by the Hokage herself, and that was grueling indeed, but she was beginning to wonder just who was the greater taskmaster. Naruto, you oaf? She yelled to her ceiling. She turned on her side to look at the clock. 7:55. Huso, Naruto-kun will be here in 5 minutes. Sakura yelped as she launched herself at her closet, all fatigue vanishing. Naruto rang the doorbell with no small amount of apprehension. Damn, this is going to be awkward as hell. He heard a muffled, coming, from inside, followed almost immediately by the door being opened. Out of the portal emerged Sakura, resplendent in a pale pink kimono which accentuated her hair and eyes beautifully. Hi Naruto-kun. So where are we going? Sakura said happily as she took his arm. Naruto smiled. Getting the night's reservations had been a pain. We'll be heading to a small place on the other side of this district. Come on. And he led her away. When Sakura realized where they were going, she stopped Naruto with her other hand. Oh Naruto-kun, you didn't. They had stopped in front of a small hut, but inside was one of the greatest chefs in the world. Sakura turned to Naruto, eyes shining. Naruto-kun, how did you know? She said as she hugged Naruto tightly. Naruto gulped at the sudden feeling that his body was sending him. I asked your mom what your favorite food was. She basically said take her to this place, so I snagged a reservation. Sakura pulled away, blushing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Come on, let's go in. She grabbed Naruto's arm and pulled him inside. The dinner passed for the most part in silence. Naruto made a few attempts at small talk to get a conversation going, as did Sakura, but both had their reservations. Sakura seemed tongue-tied for a change, and Naruto couldn't stop thinking about Hinata. After the meal, Naruto paid and took Sakura and sat her down on the same bench he had visited with Hinata the previous night. Before he could say anything, however, Sakura pulled him across the bench and kissed him soundly. Before Naruto could react, she pulled away and stared into his eyes, Shuriken silver shining. Sakura-kun, why did you kiss me? Naruto asked, afraid of her answer. Sakura smiled sadly. Because you love Hinata-kun. At least, you do, but you don't know it yet. She confessed to you last night, didn't she? Naruto nodded dumbly, fully aware that Sakura was in complete control of the situation. Sakura nodded at his answer. Well, I knew that I had no chance, so I kissed you for the first and last time. Maybe if I ever have kids I'll tell them how I kissed our esteemed Hokage, back when he was a stupid teenage guy, but for now. She trailed off sadly. Naruto smiled suddenly. You can never have too many good friends, Sakura-kun. Sakura nodded, but smiled in return. I don't know Naruto. A few years ago I was like your big sister, always telling you what to do and bonking you when you were stupid. Now, it's like a total role reversal. You're so wise and experienced and mature now. I kind of think of you like my big brother when we train. And I've never had any siblings. Naruto was struck at this point by the realization that he had all the family he would ever need here in Konoha. Jiraiya was like his father, even more so since Jiraiya trained Naruto's real father. Sakura could be his sister, and… You're right, Sakura, Nachan. Naruto yelled happily. All right, I have a sister. Sakura laughed and hugged him. The night is still young, but I'm really tired. Why don't you go visit Hinata? Naruto laughed. Sorry, I'll go easy on you guys tomorrow. Thanks, Sakura-nichan. Sakura smiled. Just don't stay up too late. She yelled as Naruto ran away. She was blown a raspberry in return. Baka, she said happily as she walked for home, trying to ignore the feeling of loneliness that threatened to envelope her.